At 31 years old, the main character appeared worn and weary from life's hardships. But everything changed when his life ended, and he found himself starting over in an entirely different world. Barely an hour into his remarkable opportunity at a new life, everything was already starting to unravel. A seasoned warrior discovered the main character sprawled out, completely defeated. She questioned his identity, but in truth, it made no difference whether this was a new world or she was someone he had never met. Only 60 minutes earlier, he had awakened in an unfamiliar place, transformed into a strange creature. Hunger gnawed at him relentlessly. Soon after, he noticed a group of small animals eating nearby, and he hoped they might let him join in. As he drew nearer, he suddenly noticed that the creatures were feasting on a human corpse. Shocked and horrified, he turned and fled, aware that the small monsters were now chasing after him. Carrying such a small, fragile body while running made his escape even more difficult. Naturally, he ended up getting discovered and assaulted. Soon after, he plummeted from the edge of a cliff. When he landed, his body was battered and broken. In that painful moment, he wondered if he even belonged in this world anymore. His brief existence seemed close to its end, and he desperately hoped the warrior would come to his rescue. Instead, she lifted her sword, prepared to strike with full force. In this reality, he was nothing more than a dangerous creature meant to be hunted by humans. With resignation, he lowered his head, convinced this was the end, with no escape possible. Yet even if he managed to survive, he had no intention of ever turning against humans. The warrior gazed at him for a moment, attempting to understand his intentions. After a pause, she questioned whether he had spoken, but soon dismissed the thought, concluding that orcs were incapable of speech, and turned away. Despite everything, her attention is suddenly drawn to something unexpected. In the world the main character left behind, police officers arrived at his home after neighbors reported hearing a loud noise. He had been completely by himself. Inside his bedroom, a computer sat alongside a 3D printer and a collection of weapon replicas. He had a habit of purchasing items online, and with surprising skill, managed to assemble his own weaponry. One day, he suffered a fatal gunshot wound, meeting a harsh and untimely end. Just before his life slipped away, a mysterious entity offered him another shot at life. The enigmatic voice explained that, since he cherished weapons so much, he could receive a blessing to both adore them and be adored in return. However, the main character declined, expressing a preference for genuine affection from another person. With that, a warrior chose to rescue him and was now tending to him by giving him a bath. The bath, infused with medicinal herbs, promised to heal his injuries swiftly. The main character slowly regained consciousness, bewildered and uncertain if he had survived. As he took in his unfamiliar surroundings, panic him. The small creature nearby collapsed in surprise at the unexpected scene before it. The warrior appears startled as well. She stared in disbelief at the creature, amazed that it could speak and surprised that it remained calm instead of turning aggressive as she treated its wounds. The main character reassured her, explaining that she had nothing to worry about. He never harmed people. However, he admitted that the meal she had offered was truly tasty. At last, she completed the bandaging, finishing the task. The main character expressed his gratitude, but she refused to accept his thanks. She tells him her name is, and wants to know what his name is. The small creature explains that he no longer has a name since his passing, so he invites her to choose one for him. Finding him adorable, decides to name him. She then suggests that he stay with her until he has fully recovered. Wonders how he could possibly repay her kindness. Assures him that she doesn't expect anything in return, though she admits she enjoys having such a cute companion nearby. Her words make feel a bit uneasy. As prepares for bed, she calls to join her, but he offers to sleep on the floor instead. Insists that he share the bed with her. Once he lies down, she quickly falls asleep and soon after. After a month had passed, their journey together continued without pause. Had completely recovered with help, and his thick fur concealed any evidence of past injuries. One unexpected advantage of his appearance was never having to worry about wearing clothes. Informed that they were going to the city, and he eagerly agreed to join her. Before entering, she fastens a collar securely around his neck. Within this society, orcs like him are labeled as terrifying creatures that prey on humans, which makes restraints necessary when moving through the city to avoid alarming the townspeople. As they walk, a girl approaches and asks for permission to squeeze. He eagerly agrees, welcoming her attention. The girl begins to enthusiastically squish the small orc, prompting him to contemplate whether he could use his appearance to frighten someone. Observing their interaction, the girl remarks on how unusual it is to find orcs described as cute. She continues to delight in squishing, thoroughly enjoying herself. At the same time, glares at the scene with intense. She departs, leaving the protagonist uncertain and promising to return soon. Now stranded within a magical ring in the heart of the city, the main character finds himself unable to move forward. Meanwhile, Ever the Warrior makes her way to the guild with plans to gather allies and pick up new quests. The atmosphere is reminiscent of a classic role-playing game, and although he's eager to support, his small monster form limits what he can do. At that moment, a girl appears, approaching and requesting his assistance with a task. He accepts and respectfully refers to her as his boss, but she quickly dismisses the title, expressing her dislike for it. Introducing herself as she reveals that she holds. Allowed him to work under her guidance so he could save up some money. She instructed him to collect additional metal. In this world, iron was abundant, and there were plenty of interesting objects, but their only purpose now was to be melted down. No matter how one looked at it, these objects were obviously weapons. The weapons had been hidden away for centuries, rendering them practically useless. They were remnants of ancient societies that had long since disappeared. People living here had no idea what these items were. Because of that, the weapons were simply considered scrap to be repurposed. And since magic held far greater power in this world, weapons didn't serve much purpose anymore. Began to ponder the situation. Without warning, a terrified cry echoed through the city center, alerting everyone that orcs had arrived. A band of orcs stormed into the streets, seizing people indiscriminately as panic swept over the crowd. Citizens scrambled in every direction, desperately seeking safety by any means possible. In the chaos, turned to, his voice trembling as he questioned the identity of the invaders. Quickly identified the creatures as orcs and urged to hide immediately, warning that although the monsters typically targeted women, his unusual appearance might make him a target as well. Determined to defend their home, several townspeople bravely stepped forward to face the threat. At the front, a young man boldly challenged. A group of guild warriors faced off against a band of orcs, knowing that defeating these monsters would earn them significant rewards. Observing the situation, believed that the presence of these skilled fighters meant they could handle whatever came next, but dismissed his optimism, calling him hopelessly naive. She urged the main character to pay close attention to what was about to happen. The orcs, using the kidnapped girls as human shields, challenged the warriors to approach them. One of the warriors, disgusted by the tactic, accused the orcs of being nothing but cowards. Watching the unfolding chaos, found the absurdity of the standoff almost laughable and questioned why the supposed heroes remained passive. However, the orc had no intention of letting her go easily. Because she had defeated one of his comrades, he was determined to make her suffer as punishment. His mind was set on tormenting her before finally killing her. Raising his voice, the orc yelled threateningly yet she stood her ground with fierce determination. In response, she shouted back, vowing that he would never break her spirit. The orc remains unfazed by her resistance and advances regardless. Rise senses the mounting tension and fearfully anticipates what will happen next. Without warning, the orc's head bursts apart, startling the girl and causing her to leap back in shock. The orc collapses lifelessly to the earth, while the rest of the group stares in horror, unsure if a spell had just been cast. One orc's head exploded, quickly followed by the others meeting the same fate. The final orc, panicking, attempted to escape, but his head burst before he could get away. A sniper had taken them all down with deadly precision. Was the one responsible for firing the shot. Known for impressive marksmanship, could easily strike targets from a distance of 2 kilometers without any difficulty. Forcefully broke the lock that kept captive, allowing her to escape. The main character had always believed that being able to communicate with weapons wasn't anything special. However, he soon discovered that he possessed a rare ability in a world where weapons were considered nothing more than legends. By rescuing, he not only became a hero, but also gained a trustworthy friend. Walked confidently through the doors of the guild building. Inside the crew's quarters, everyone wondered what had been thinking, going after orcs alone. Doubt filled the room as someone pointed out that she returned unharmed, but taking on orcs solo seemed impossible. At the table, slammed down proof of her victory, a bounty for 6 orcs she defeated on her journey. She demanded that the full reward go to the girls who had been hurt by the orcs. One of the warriors leapt up, furious, and questioned if she was being serious. Another man grew agitated, insisting there was no way managed the feat by herself, countered by explaining she received help from someone skilled in long-range magic. The frustrated man pressed her, unsure if. Wondered about whereabouts, recalling that her home was 3 kilometers from his current location. He soon concluded that she was likely at the guild instead. Without warning, eerie monsters appeared, blocking his way forward. Recognizing them as dangerous creatures, understood he might be their next target. Unlike before, the monsters were directly within his range. He unleashed another attack using his weapon. Excitement surged through as he confronted the threat. He believed no one could harm him, confident in his safety as the sole person carrying a weapon in a realm ruled by magic and swords. The guild receptionist returned to, handing her a hefty sum of 60,000 coins. One of the men nearby remarked that this amount could let her relax for 2 whole years, questioning if she truly planned to spend it all at once. Another person was curious and asked if had really witnessed someone casting long-range magic. A man drinking his beer wondered aloud about the specific type of magic that had been used. Casually shrugged, remarking that the orcs' heads came off without much effort. The man looked unconvinced, insisting he'd never encountered such a powerful spell before. He explained that after many years traveling, he knew orcs weren't defeated so easily. At best, he admitted, he could only manage to drive them off when fighting at his hardest. Strode in, boasting that she had defeated every last one of them, but he refused to believe such an easy solution existed. Outraged, he accused of scheming to trick the guild. He advanced toward her, his posture menacing. Retorted sharply, pointing out that he was tasked with protecting the streets, yet couldn't even deal with a few orcs. His temper began to spiral out of control. She accused him of putting girls in danger by sending them into the streets where orcs could capture them, all while he collected guild rewards for himself. The people around them grew restless, demanding evidence from the warrior to support his actions. The young man attempts to soothe the crowd, but his efforts only make them angrier. A person in the group shouts that he's the city's champion and that they can't allow this insult to go unpunished. The young man claims to understand their emotions, urging them to relax, insisting it's only a girl causing a disturbance. His response sounds suspicious, especially since he's clutching stolen guild money. He pushed hair to the side, uncovering a large scar on her back. He pointed out that this was undeniable proof. Every adventurer recognizes the significance of that scar. It signals someone who causes problems. This mark suggests that, when faced with danger, she would abandon her comrades without hesitation. The rest of the fighters add their thoughts, insisting that nobody would choose to join forces with her, explaining why she always battles alone. Now she insists that magic destroyed the orcs, but the others are convinced she's making it up since nobody supports her story. Arrived at the entrance of the guild, holding his weapon and boldly announcing that he was partner. The men inside glanced over, surprised to spot the small creature. One of them recalled seeing before, the little companion often seen following through town. Despite his size, his expression made it clear that he meant every word. Fired at the man's leg, sending a shock of pain through him that left him stunned. For a moment, the wounded man struggled to understand what had just occurred. Overwhelmed by agony, he collapsed to the ground, his screams filling the air as tears streamed down his face, his mind clouded by the pain. Nearby, another warrior demanded to know what kind of move had just used. The main character explained that he was simply making use of his weapon. The youth lunges forward with his sword held aloft, yet swiftly strikes his leg before he can react. Reassures the boy, mentioning that his injury is minor and he'll recover quickly. Observing from nearby, a knight approaches and comments that this attack appeared to be some kind of advanced magic from afar. However, casually dismisses the idea, explaining that it was nothing more than a simple physical blow. Meanwhile, a wizard begins to chant an incantation, the words spilling out in a jumbled pattern reminiscent of a cat stepping across a keyboard. Just as he begins to cast his magic, delivers another blow to his leg. The main character confidently declares that no matter what curses are aimed his way, he remains untouchable since his weapon hails from a different world. Meanwhile, a different soldier attempts to intimidate the boy, only to be swiftly defeated. Every challenger who tried to intervene was quickly defeated. Seething with anger, ordered the crowd to return to their miserable lives and warned them to be grateful for surviving the encounter. The battered group retreated, nursing their injuries, as made sure they would always remember what happened that day. realized that in this moment had truly looked out for her. The main character suggested that, after she finished collecting her reward, they should head back home together. Amazed and still processing everything, the girl could hardly believe it, then announced his intention to become her partner from that point on. Her heart pounded with excitement, but before anything more could happen, someone called out for. The man remarked that managed all the trouble with impressive skill, and the group felt deeply thankful. When the troublemaker appeared, he created a lot of chaos, but swiftly dealt with him and sent him away. As a token of appreciation, the man offered the group a small reward from the guild. That night, everyone was free to eat and drink as much as they liked. The atmosphere turned lively as the group began to celebrate together. Feeling excited, started a conversation with. She smiled brightly, showing she was eager to join him in enjoying the festivities. After some time, they arrived in front of her house. The main character observed thoroughly enjoying himself, happily eating all the food and savoring the drinks, though it was clear he was starting to feel dizzy and unsteady on his feet. Deciding it was time to rest, leapt onto the bed, signaling that he was ready to sleep, only to notice moving toward the opposite side of the room. She mentions her plan to play for a while, and lets him know that he is welcome to join her. Chooses to join her, feeling thrilled to spend time by her side. As she turned away, the main character assured himself that he felt no concern, yet a single thought lingered in his mind. If the mark truly came from a rogue, he found it hard to accept, since she didn't seem like someone who would be involved in such things. The scar carried a shocking history, prompting to approach her. He quickly grabbed one of the controllers. Stared in disbelief, surprised that actually understood how to play. Despite his tiny, soft appearance, managed to handle almost everything humans could do. Then, adopting a more sincere tone, expressed her gratitude for her friend's constant support. Stood in stunned silence after receiving such an enthusiastic. Regaining his composure, he assured her that there was no need for gratitude. Expressing affection in this way came naturally to him. From that moment forward, the two of them became an unstoppable team, unmatched anywhere in the universe. At one location, a person inquired about the girl's desires, to which she responded that she was in the mood for some milk. A group of guys behind her began to tease her simply because she wanted milk. One of them approached, insisting that a bar was meant for alcohol, not milk. Unbothered, the girl calmly reminded him that the sign advertised both drinks and food. She then took her time choosing her drink. The obnoxious guy continued to ridicule her, and his friends laughed along. Before he could continue, she launched a powerful kick that sent him sprawling, firmly warning him to leave her alone. She moved to the table, biting into her toast, and taking small sips of her milk. She spoke with the group of boys gathered nearby, bringing up a story about a warrior called who had bravely faced an entire team of orcs alone. At the same time, pondered quietly, confidence swelling within him because the weapon in his possession never failed. Elsewhere, herself with tidying her home, came to the uneasy conclusion that without the weapon he was virtually defenseless. He understood that if he failed to secure it, there would be no way for him to keep safe. Frustrated, the girl grumbled about lack of help around the house. In response, the main character picked up a pistol and began honing his aim by shooting at clay pots. He realizes that his intense training comes with significant outcomes, just as a girl approaches him and remarks on how remarkable his abilities are. Startled, he leaps back at the unexpected sight of her presence. Although he usually reacted quickly, this time his instincts failed him. The girl considers whether something supernatural might be at play. Meanwhile, the main character grows so anxious that he finds himself unable to speak. The girl hurriedly moved away from, her anger clear as she labeled him a monster. She couldn't stand that he was a small creature with magical powers pretending to be human, and it was making her lose her patience. Quickly understood that retreating had been a poor choice, but now he had the chance to reveal his latest creation. The main character reacted instantly, snatching up his gun. He fired several rounds at the girl, but every shot went wide as she expertly evaded them. In response, she landed a powerful kick to his midsection, sending the orc hurtling through the air. He tumbles to the floor, his mind spinning in bewilderment. The girl glances down at him with a sly grin, thinking to herself that luck certainly isn't on his side today. If she hadn't witnessed his magic earlier, she would have been in serious danger. Suddenly, a voice calls out, urging the girl to calm down. Appears, confidently approaching with her sword in hand. Clearly irritated, insists that is her partner. The girl arches an eyebrow, silently questioning whether isn't actually a monster, and wonders aloud what could possibly mean. The enraged warrior lashed out at the girl, her sword slicing through the air with force. Swift, fearless charge caught the girls completely off guard. Despite her quick reflexes to avoid them, she still ended up getting grazed. She then swung her leg in an attempt to strike, but swiftly moved aside with the agility of a ninja. Quickly reacting, summoned her magic to shield herself. Ultimately, his abilities proved far more formidable than anyone had anticipated, leaving the girls completely baffled about what to do next. With the speed of a sudden storm, she unleashed a rapid series of sword attacks. Her opponent, a young girl, was forced to retreat, expertly blocking each blow. It became clear that this formidable fighter was the very opponent she had been seeking. Raising her hands in defeat, the girl admitted she was giving up. She revealed that her name was, and expressed regret for having attacked the small creature. She confessed her difficulty in accepting that was actually his companion. Ultimately, she spared the small creature, leaving him only startled and intrigued by his mysterious abilities. Hurried to his side, both anxious and grateful that he was unharmed. Then inquired whether was the one responsible for defeating the orcs alone. Clarified that not all the rumors were accurate. She confirmed her identity, but explained that was the true hero who defeated the orcs. The main character already began to regret ever challenging. Later, inside's home, made sure there were no lingering hard feelings, explaining the situation had simply been a misunderstanding. Agreed, admitting the fault was. Retreated a little and signaled for to come closer. He dashed over without hesitation. Immediately began showering her with affection, and observed how unusually he interacted with others. Meanwhile, the main character silently believed that was seeking payback for what happened earlier. With now right next to her, wondered aloud whether he might be confusing her with an orc. Appeared to feel completely at ease in his presence. Suddenly, he dropped down and wrapped his arms around her in a hug. Stood nearby, remarking that always behaved this way, while responded by noting how peculiar he was. Later on, informed about a significant bounty that had been placed on an important individual. Explains that her work as a monster hunter rarely brings her into contact with others. Then, shares that she has discovered the monster's path, noting how cunning it has been by not leaving any evidence behind. Paused, lost in contemplation. The girl then revealed that she was a lone hunter, and that was the one she was after. With a calm demeanor, wished good luck, not appearing particularly concerned. However, insisted that this time she needed support and couldn't handle things alone. The help had to come from another girl. While maintained she hadn't fought the orcs, knew her abilities were genuine. Later, the two made their way to his caravan, realizing that simply finding the place was only the beginning of their mission. Observed that the caravan resembled a massive building more than a vehicle, astonishing when she discovered he could speak. She agreed with his assessment, noting that a structure like that couldn't possibly be disassembled and reassembled on a whim, especially considering the enormous cost involved. Soon. The door opened wide to welcome, and inside. A massive, slippery creature revealed that it had been anticipating their arrival, explaining that it greatly admired human dancers. Greeted him warmly, though inwardly she regarded Dom as nothing less than an elegant predator. Complained about how dark it was inside, but calmly told her that her eyes would get used to it soon. After a short while's vision adjusted, and she could make out everything in the room. Several subordinates were seated on the floor, their eyes fixed on and, feeling uneasy, turned to make sure she understood the situation and questioned if their plan would succeed, then quickly apologized for doubting her. Confessed her intention to capture and acknowledged help, adding that she would split the reward with her. Before could say more, interrupted and ordered them to dance. The two girls began to move to the rhythm as the subordinates. Hips and legs moved with an effortless rhythm, drawing attention from everyone around her. The crowd watched in awe, captivated by the way she danced. Meanwhile, herself couldn't help but question her own reasons for being there at all. Suggested that everyone should put on clothes that couldn't be seen. Erica immediately begins changing into the outfit, wasting no time. Next, she gently encouraged to follow her lead. Though hesitation flickered across face, she decided to try it on. The unique stitching of the outfit immediately drew everyone's attention, sparking admiration from all around. As the boys began offering her praise, nerves kicked in and she felt flustered. Began to understand and let out a quiet laugh. Slick tentacles snaked around, catching her off guard. He coiled tightly around her limbs, then hoisted her off the ground before she could react. Fixing his gaze on, recognized her as the one responsible for defeating his orcs. As he observed her, he realized she possessed enough strength to overcome his minions. At the same time, shouted out hoping for help. The girl lunged toward her, explaining that this was why she had been the first to apologize. Despite her apology, she insisted that everything she had said was the truth. In that moment, recognized that had completely betrayed her. Seeking confirmation, asked what the problem was. Responded by explaining that she had only stated what she expected from support, and because of that help, she had managed to get close to. Even offered to split the rewards with if they survived. Hearing all of this made anxious and on edge. Then declared that she alone would be the one to defeat. Shaken, began to stumble over her words. At the same time, the monster couldn't understand the situation unfolding before him. Stretched his enormous jaws wide, ready to swallow his targets, expressing his fondness for food that moved as if it were dancing. Outside the caravan, stood guard, observing the scene with his weapon in hand. He observes that, despite the passage of time, everything remains perfectly still. He questioned the reason behind the caravan's presence, but he felt certain it was connected to magic. Although he had only recently arrived in this realm, he quickly realized that the magical assaults used here were especially formidable. When a mage launched an attack, even the strongest recovery potions might not be enough to save the victim. Mages were also particularly skilled at concealing themselves. To counter this threat, guards were stationed in exposed areas, decreasing the likelihood of a mage successfully landing a strike, and enabling them to warn others if danger appeared. Within that world, the caravan operated with impressive efficiency and order, yet all of this depended on the absence of a sniper. For someone equipped with such a weapon, eliminating the guards would pose little challenge. If trouble erupted, the sniper could swiftly dispatch the guards and then deal with anyone who ventured out to investigate. Ultimately, found himself restless from boredom. Meanwhile, as prepared to devour, retreated cautiously. She understood that this creature held an S-rank status, yet she was also aware of its particular vulnerability, which became apparent whenever it was eating. As the creature feasted on a human, its guard lowered and its attention wavered. Understood she didn't need to rely on any weapons. Her training had prepared her for moments just like this. Now her focus was on weaving swiftly among her fellow soldiers. Everything she did was fueled by a desire for payback against a girl named her own sister who had passed away. Shouted at, insisting that there was no need for her to risk her life when was capable of fighting the monster. The nearby guards were incensed by the idea of overthrowing their leader. Doubted that the small creature could triumph, but argued that the collapsing walls would give. She rushed toward, her voice raised in a furious shout. The guards ordered her to calm down, but their efforts were no match for her determination. She began to recall words, remembering how had stood up for her unwaveringly. Questioned true strength as she suddenly slowed down. Quickly turning, she darted to the opposite side. Although uncertainty lingered about what would happen next, she remained determined to support no matter what. Despite her deception remained certain that the girl would never betray her trust. Suddenly, unleashed her fierce energy and lunged at the wall with unstoppable force, striking it with a powerful kick. The wall broke apart into countless fragments. Noticed a sudden movement nearby. Looking closer, he recognized dashing past, almost hidden by her invisible disguise. Moved swiftly but trailed closely, closing the distance between them with surprising speed. She questioned how could move so fast after eating so much. Meanwhile, was overwhelmed with fear, having never encountered a creature of such enormous size before. Warned that escape was impossible, declaring that she would end up as his meal as well. Fear surged through when she realized was nowhere to be found. Instantly, she wished she had ignored suggestion. However, just as the creature's tentacles reached for her, something forcefully collided with it. Believes his purpose is to defend and battle the boss, yet he suddenly notices that is no longer in sight. He continues to destroy tentacles, breaking them apart relentlessly. Meanwhile, watches in terror at the destruction and questions whether that creature is truly acting as her guardian. Suddenly, realization dawns on her. It must be behind the chaos. Concerned, searches her surroundings, but she is unable to find the boy anywhere. Comes to the startling conclusion that this being could have leapt from the world of a video game. He finds it unbelievable that such a massive creature could actually be. In reality, this enormous monster is a fearsome beast from beneath the ground. His entire body remained hidden underground, with only his head emerging above the surface. No one had ever managed to defeat the creature, so the caravan had been constructed specifically to shield the part that stuck out. Eventually, his eyes landed on, and she realized his impressive ability to fire accurately from afar. Just then, a mounted guard rushed toward, ready to attack. Delivered a powerful kick that sent the man tumbling to the ground. Declaring that she had no intention of showing mercy, she swiftly grabbed the warrior's sword. With determination in her eyes, she prepared herself for the upcoming fight. Observed the girl as she prepared herself to battle the enormous beast, curiosity flickering in his mind about her thoughts in that intense moment. Meanwhile, the girl shouted at, insisting that if he truly possessed such strength, he ought to assist her. Deadly tentacles lunged toward, threatening her with their menacing reach. Before has a chance to attack, swiftly defeats their opponents, feels a surge of excitement and emotion. She aimed the sword directly at, determination in her eyes. Without hesitation, she drove the blade into the creature, striking it with force. Despite her efforts, his tough skin hardly gives way, making it much harder to pierce than she expected. No matter how hard she tries, she cannot push the blade any further. Ultimately, her swordsmanship proves ineffective against. Then, out of nowhere, a gunshot strikes the creature. Believes he has discovered the creature's vulnerable point. He repeatedly struck in the exact same place, causing the creature to twist and squirm in agony. Soldiers stood back, paralyzed by fear and unwilling to approach him. Suddenly noticed an arm forcing its way out from the creature's body. To his amazement, emerged completely from inside the beast. Was stunned. He realized he had almost attacked her, not knowing she was there, which could have been disastrous. Quickly tossed her sword allowing her to join the ongoing battle. Deadly tentacles immediately engulfed the warrior as she entered the fray. She called out to the others, assuring them that would provide cover while they concentrated on their assault. Acknowledged command, trusting that she understood the situation, channeling her. As the fight raged on, a sudden gunshot struck one of the soldiers in the head, ending his life instantly. Shocked and gripped by fear, the remaining soldier barely had time to react before he, too, was brought down by another bullet. From his vantage point above, kept a close watch over the scene. Determined to protect, he refused to let any harm come her way, no matter if the threat was human or monster. At the same time, and continued their assault on, suddenly noticed a peculiar detail and focused her attention on one of the cracks in its exterior. Using her strength, she forced the crack wider, revealing something hidden within. As she peered inside, found herself staring at a disturbing entity. The figure resembled a twisted version of a human and began to address directly. Could hardly believe that the creature before them was actually a person. The grotesque being let out a chilling laugh and unleashed a stream of vile words. Without hesitation, swiftly cut the monster in two. Stands frozen in disbelief as form begins to break apart, dissolving right before her eyes. They had at last succeeded in defeating the beast, sending it tumbling forcefully to the earth. Warned Erica to remain alert, aware that was backed by an entire team. As scanned their surroundings, her eyes caught sight of something unusual. It became clear that had effortlessly defeated every one of them. After the exhausting fight that had pushed the main character to her limits, explained to that giving up would be understandable. After all, she had already avenged her sister and, having turned against, had forfeited her right to survive. Despite words, remained unfazed. A smile spread across her face as she reminded of their deal to share the spoils. Could only stare in shock at its unexpected response. Walked over and remarked that the final survivors had fled in fear. He then admired their skill at disappearing. Responded by rolling her eyes at him. After embracing him in gratitude for their support, proposed that they unwind with a relaxing bath and catch up on some much-needed sleep. Eagerly agreed, admitting exhaustion. Once home, the group gathered around a card game, sharing laughter and enjoying each other's company. As they played, reflected on how unforgiving this world could be, yet felt genuinely excited for the new opportunity he had found here. The following day in the city, marched into the guild and dramatically slapped a massive tongue onto the counter. The receptionist stared in disbelief as recounted the tale of their victory. Chimed in, explaining that not only had they defeated, but they had also brought back some of. The formation of the Legion began quietly, unnoticed by everyone. When arrived home, she noticed that the blade of sword was a bit damaged, made a light-hearted remark about his habit of swinging her sword with too much force, but didn't find it amusing. The two of them agreed it was time to head out and get the sword sharpened. Elsewhere, at the blacksmith's workshop, was busy examining a pile of bullets collected from various weapons. He found it fascinating how unusual this world could be. Although the bullets appeared worthless at first glance, he realized that with proper cleaning they could be reused. Weapons held little value in this place, making bullets easy to come by for him. This suited him perfectly, given his preference for firearms over social connections, as he himself appeared and informed him that someone was looking for him. Startled at the sight of and only to realize they had come for a different purpose, needed her sword repaired, and everyone agreed that was the most skilled blacksmith available. Flustered by the compliment, examined the blade carefully. After her inspection, she concluded that the sword was beyond repair, wondered aloud if it could at least be sharpened, but dismissed the idea with a shake of her head. She explained that the weapon simply couldn't keep up with strength. What truly required was a sword forged from sacred metal. Was astonished to learn that this legendary material was real, rather than a mere myth. Clarified. They needed to travel to the central city regardless. Wondered aloud about its latest plan. Explained that they could earn a lot of money during their journey, having discovered some outstanding missions along the route. She pointed out that there were special opportunities available only to girls, and they didn't want to miss out. A colossal train thundered down the railway, pulled by an enormous, multi-legged beast with a hard, armored shell. The train barreled forward with incredible speed. Inside the packed cars, passengers stood shoulder to shoulder. Among them, two girls voiced their frustration about the cramped conditions. Unfortunately, lacking funds for a more comfortable ride, they had no choice but to endure the crowded space, even travelers in first class. The girl appeared utterly bewildered, glancing over her shoulder with a startled expression. She confided in her friend, admitting that something was making her uneasy. Suddenly, a fresh wave of tickling sensations spread across her leg and torso. She panicked, unsure if what was happening was real or just her imagination, fear gripping her tightly. At that moment, her friend sensed the same strange sensation, mentioning that she too felt something tickling her. Suddenly, both girls experienced an inexplicable oddness together. Although the room appeared empty, an invisible force seemed to brush against them. Startled, one of the girls screamed loudly in shock. The other, confused and alarmed, questioned what was happening. They began to shout, convinced that something is hiding nearby. Feeling overwhelmed by the heat inside the train, they quickly pulled off their outer layers to cool down. The girls moved quickly, their voices rising in shrill screams as they rushed forward. At last, and stood together on the train platform, looked completely puzzled by the whole experience, since he had never encountered anything like a train before. Explained that the train could carry a huge crowd of passengers and travel at incredible speeds. As soon as the train arrived and came to a halt, the group climbed into the second-class cabin, making light-hearted remarks about how would need to stay with the luggage since orcs weren't allowed in the passenger area. The main character attempted to protest, but his attention was quickly diverted when a girl rushed by at impressive speed. Two girls, wearing nothing but invisible garments, raced forward with tears streaming down their faces. The group quickly runs off, leaving puzzled by their strange behavior. Observes the situation and realizes things are more serious than she expected. Determined, she reminds herself that uncovering the culprit is part of her responsibilities. Feels puzzled as he wonders aloud whether intends to act as bait, but she shows no hesitation and is fully committed to the plan. She points out that although knives aren't allowed inside the cabin, there are no rules against a physical confrontation. Believes this mission suits her skills perfectly, and even though she isn't sure what tactics the enemy will use, she's determined to fight hard. Observes unwavering self-assurance. He glances at the crowded carriage and realizes it's an ideal place for their target to remain hidden. For both, and defeating the creature is absolutely essential. Despite everything, an uneasy sense lingered in his mind. Over in the luggage compartment, became aware of a noisy monkey causing quite a disturbance beside him. He felt uncomfortable and out of place in that location. He managed to break loose from the chains and make his escape. Now, he needed to find a way to reach the main cabin. And Erica observed the packed area around them. their eyes scanning the crowd as they quietly questioned whether their adversary might be hiding nearby. Erica realized that only she had exited the train, which meant their target must still be somewhere inside. Explained that she had looked everywhere, but only found other girls, which made sense since they already knew their target was a man. Reminded her that this information was included in their mission details. Although their opponent existed, he remained invisible to everyone. Rise doubted that anyone could cause trouble in such a crowded cabin without being noticed. She pointed out that with barely any space to move, they had no chance to face their opponent directly. Without warning, felt a tickling sensation on her legs. She remarked to herself that her target had arrived sooner than expected, but upon glancing around, she found no one nearby. Whirling around in surprise, she noticed that everyone else appeared oblivious to the strange occurrence. Noticed odd behavior and asked if something was wrong, but before could respond, experienced a tickle on her own leg. Without warning, a strange shirt lands on Erica before she has a chance to react. Erica felt a flush of embarrassment rise to her cheeks as she tried to make sense of the unexpected situation unfolding before her. Experiences the exact situation as before. Both girls found themselves trapped in a crowded train car, the press of strangers making the atmosphere tense. Awkwardness settled over as she turned to, uncertain about their next move. Without warning, another jolt startled, and a wave of even stronger ticklish sensations swept over them both. Soon discovered that placing her hand on the spot where she felt the tickling would stop the sensation. But as soon as she did, the tickles simply shifted to a new location. No one knows how to handle the chaos unfolding before them. Onlookers are captivated, their eyes glued to the spectacle of the two girls completely unraveling. At the same time, emerges cautiously from behind the luggage, confused by the commotion. His gaze falls on, and both dressed in odd costumes. He quickly realizes that this dilemma isn't something a weapon can fix. Unfortunately, his talents are limited to combat, leaving him at a loss. While riding the train, Erica demands that the others avert their gazes, frustrated by the unwanted attention. The surrounding passengers assume the group is simply causing a scene and fail to grasp the seriousness of the moment. Feeling overwhelmed by the chaos, insists that things are spiraling out of control and urges the group to find a way to escape the predicament. However, without being able to spot their adversary, they find themselves trapped. Fear rising, they all release sharp, panicked screams. Observes that the movement happens so quickly, it reminds her of attempting to grasp a wisp of smoke, and silently acknowledges that this perfectly sums up the problem. Everyone sensed an odd atmosphere, and quickly warned the others not to stare. Inside the train, the pair began to cause a commotion, which attracted even more attention from the surrounding passengers. Explained that she sensed a strange presence approaching from behind. Soon admitted that she could feel it as well, surprised by the sensation. Meanwhile, observed the situation from above, his nerves growing with worry. He wonders about his purpose in this place, uncertainty clouding his mind. As he ponders, a sudden movement draws his attention. He notices a quick blur darting behind the group of girls. In that instant, the movement happened so swiftly that ordinary eyes would never catch it. To keep up, the choice was to use a rifle scope attached to a powerful weapon. If he truly was the weapon master in this world, hitting the mark should be effortless for him. He remained vigilant, prepared to display his expertise at any moment. Suddenly, he spotted a minuscule winged being darting past him. Though he glimpsed it for only a brief moment, he recognized what it was, a small elf. These creatures moved at incredible speeds and delighted in causing mischief, especially toward women. Determined to put an end to their antics, resolved to eliminate all of the troublesome beings. However, he quickly recalled. He noticed a girl in the crowd, his attention drawn by something unusual. Earlier, she had been wearing a necklace. Now he saw the mischievous creature that had stolen it. At that point, notices more flying creatures soaring nearby, each gripping something sparkling. Realization dawns on him, it's a clever trick. These creatures create diversions to steal belongings when no one is paying attention. Spotted and urgently called out, signaling for him to take action. At last, the main character understood what was expected and prepared to respond. He returns to the storage car, determined now that he understands the situation. With a clear goal in mind, he believes that stopping the troublesome creatures will bring the madness under control. Despite expecting to spot them inside, the area is empty. The monkey beside him frantically gestures upward, clearly alarmed. Meanwhile, the train races swiftly along the rails. Pushed open the train's rooftop door, curiosity about the monkey's knowledge lingering in his mind. However, the moment he emerged, a chaotic scene unfolded before him. Numerous monstrous creatures perched atop enormous slugs were pursuing the train with relentless speed. Quickly understood that an entire group had joined the chase. Meanwhile, the small winged bandits were making off with various stolen goods from the train, hurriedly stuffing their treasures into their miniature bags. At last understood the situation completely. The small, quick creatures existed solely to snatch up anything valuable and deliver it to their group. With all the necessary information in hand, he could resolve the issue swiftly. One of the creatures noticed watching them, but the rest dismissed any concern, thinking that the orc posed no threat. However, had already targeted them. In an instant before the monster could react, its head exploded and the one standing behind suffered the same fate. Both collapsed to the ground, defeated. Continued to fire at the monsters, destroying them one after another. Soon, he retrieved his pistol from earlier, ready to confront the winged enemies as well. He eliminated them swiftly, causing them to fall rapidly. The larger beasts grew uneasy, baffled by what kind of power possessed. One of them tried to fight back, lifting a bow to shoot at the protagonist. The group was humiliating the women in order to commit theft, and on top of that, they were exploiting small creatures to manipulate others. Before has a chance to react, a monster suddenly appears beside him and delivers a swift kick. The main character tumbled across the top of the train, struggling to keep a grip and not fall. The creature seemed to taunt, implying that the fight shouldn't end so quickly for the MC. However, just as it prepared to push off the side, something interrupted its plan. The object is suddenly struck from the rear. Commented that, had a habit of always allowing himself to be captured. Extended her hand toward the creature while it hurriedly climbed back to the roof of the train. Wrapping her arms around, she reminded him that their purpose was to support one another. His main responsibility was to protect them. Meanwhile, noticed something unusual. One of the creatures was attempting to break free. Assured that she didn't need to worry, confident in his plan. Questioned whether he could really make such a distant shot. Replied that a kilometer was nothing and that hitting the target would be simple for him. Without hesitation, he unleashed an attack that completely destroyed the monster. Was left in awe by what she witnessed, and wondered aloud if this was first time seeing the small creature display such impressive shooting skills. Ultimately, he proved to be a reliable ally when it mattered most. The conductor explained that returning everyone's belongings deserved a special reward. Relaxed comfortably in first class, feeling at ease with the situation. Their journey continued smoothly. Expressed her gratitude to the conductor for allowing them to enjoy first class without paying. The conductor replied that it was the very least he could offer. Meanwhile, gazed curiously out the window, trying to figure out their current location. He notices a castle appearing in the distance. Gazed outward and agreed with, acknowledging that this was indeed the continent's capital, the central city known for having all the finest goods. Their group entered the heart of the city. Full of excitement, expressed that it was her first time visiting such a big metropolis and thought it was amazing. Remarked that this bustling place was the ideal spot to acquire the ultimate weapon for. She mentioned the famous weapon shops, suggesting they explore them together. However, when they arrived at the shop, they found it closed. Was taken aback by this and appeared equally puzzled. Quickly regaining her optimism, pointed out that there were other weapon shops ahead where they might have better luck. Delivered a swift kick to his face, sending him soaring through the air. She made it clear, with absolute certainty, that no amount of money could ever persuade her to be with him. The man began to complain, prompting to warn him against underestimating someone who could fight back. She then wondered aloud why such chaos was unfolding in the middle of the day, reminiscing about when the city had been full of energy and excitement. Mentioned that she could try to talk more later. Without warning, a group of soldiers surrounded them. Turned to the guards, asking what the problem was. One of the guards explained that they had seen someone disturbing the peace in the city. Offered an apology for the earlier altercation and continued speaking, but the guard interrupted her, clarifying that she was not the issue. The real problem was, as creatures like her were forbidden within the city limits. The guard. A group of friendly young women wandered leisurely along the bustling city sidewalks. As they arrived at the mission wall, they noticed that every available task was meant for women, specifically calling for dancers or mages. As they stood in the room, an unmistakable sense of being watched settled over them. The guild administrator approached, pointing out how unusual it was to see girls in that place. He mentioned that women hadn't been seen around those streets in a very long time. The men nearby begin to nod in agreement, admitting they haven't encountered a woman in a long time. Grows increasingly uneasy as all eyes focus on her. The administrator explains that the city's women are staying indoors, fearful because someone has been abducting them. There is an available mission to uncover the cause behind the women's disappearances, with a large cash prize promised to whoever succeeds. The administrator adds that many men have attempted to take on this mission, but none have managed to solve it. Believed that this assignment required a woman's touch to succeed. The administrator wondered aloud if strategy involved intentionally getting captured, and confirmed that was her plan, as long as it allowed them to accept the mission. Since constant attacks plagued the city, reasoned that they might as well profit from their inevitable abduction. Meanwhile, worried about safety, and decided she would ask the guards to release him before they made their escape. However, remained unfazed, assuring everyone that the orc would be fine. She trusted the guild administrator, who seemed reasonable enough, so if necessary, they could rely on him to keep safe as a backup plan. The main problem was that they were trapped in the city. In her mind, this was the reason everything had changed so drastically. She suspected that even the closure of the weapon shop might be connected to the chaos surrounding them. At the same time, found himself locked up in a jail cell. At times, he loses sight of the fact that he is merely a young orc, viewed as a creature to be feared in this land. Yet within this city, nobody treats him with fear. Suddenly, the monsters around him begin to stir and cause a commotion. Can't help but question what has everyone so excited. Just then, something unusual appears and comes to a halt directly behind him, capturing his attention. Leaped into the air, startled. As he spun around, he found himself face to face with an enormous monster looming nearby. The monstrous creature unleashed a thunderous roar loud enough to rattle the whole block, leaving the main character bewildered about his cellmates' bizarre behavior and questioning why fate had paired him with such a terrifying presence. Meanwhile, one of the guards made light of the situation, jokingly announcing that a special banquet awaited the beast. In that moment, suddenly understood with horror that he was meant to be the main course. Acting quickly, he drew his gun and aimed it at the guards, who burst into laughter and mocked his unfamiliar weapon. Having never encountered this fearsome creature before, doubted whether a single shot would be enough to stop it, and silently wished the ordeal would end soon. Without warning, the monster. As the strange creature grew louder, anxiety increased. The guards began to taunt the small orc, mocking his trembling and calling out his obvious fear. They doubted that someone as small as could ever make an impact, regardless of his intentions. However, the main character kept his confidence, aware that he had a strategy in mind. The presence of the gun changed everything. It allowed even someone without physical strength to stand a chance. With this new weapon, the odds were suddenly much more equal. Aimed carefully and fired a round straight at the creature's head. The creature collapses heavily to the ground. The guards stood frozen in shock from the scene before them, but moved quickly, disabling them before they could respond. His plan had been to finish the job with a single shot, yet the guards proved to be more troublesome than he expected. Without wasting any more time, grabbed the key to his cell and dashed away to make his escape. Continued his search, this time looking for ammunition. In this strange world, bullets were hidden in unexpected places, often buried and difficult to uncover. Fortunately, possessed a unique talent that made locating weapons much easier for him than for others. He begins to dig into the earth, and as he watches searching for bullets, memories of a man from long ago surface in his mind. A man had suddenly become obsessed with digging, insisting he received divine instructions. He believed he was supposed to hide bullets at that exact spot, and his wild, almost trance-like behavior made him seem possessed. Meanwhile, managed to acquire some ammunition, feeling a sense of wonder at how fate always seemed to provide him with whatever weaponry he needed. As the orc exited his cage, he observed that the guards nearby were behaving unusually. He realized he couldn't waste any more time, convinced that Rise was in imminent danger, and hurried to return. While he planned his next steps, paused in front of a cage holding a beast that resembled a dog. He decided to enlist this creature's help to track down his, and relied on the dog monster's keen sense of smell to follow's trail, determined to catch up to her. The creature led them through winding paths until they finally arrived at a location chosen by its instincts. The creature paused in front of an area that appeared deserted. With a gentle nudge, it encouraged the group to move a nearby wardrobe. Bravely took the lead and shifted the heavy piece of furniture. Revealed beneath it was a concealed opening in the floor. Without hesitation, and the strange dog-like beast plunged into the eerie cavern below. Shadows filled the vast chamber, its size astonishing. Was awestruck by the realization that such an enormous space had been hidden beneath their feet. Suspects there could be a connection between what they've discovered and the disappearance of the girls, feeling a sense of urgency settle over the group. Acknowledges his limited usefulness since he only has a pistol, but realizes there's no turning back now. Despite their worries, they press on, venturing further into the depths of the cave. As they continue, observes that the cave's winding passages resemble a labyrinth, and he recognizes that without the guidance of the small dog, they would be completely disoriented. Signals to the others to pause for a moment. She claims a secret lies deep within the cave, yet eyes find only darkness. The dog-like beast rushed straight for the place it had noticed, and observed as the creature vanished into the shadows. Suddenly the creature reappeared, pursued by enormous insects. Signaled for to stay behind, recognizing the monsters as colossal ants. Without hesitation, hurled a punch at one of the giant bugs. Manages to remove one creature, but the second one looks eager for a fight. The beast lunges, its fangs gleaming, and clamps down on its weapon. As she tries to pull it free, the sword breaks cleanly in two. Witnessing this, realizes blade is now useless, so he draws his own weapon, ready to join the battle. He opens fire on the enormous ants, unleashing a barrage of shots at them. He managed to bring down several with single shots, but the enemies kept coming in overwhelming numbers. After firing several times, discovered that his gun was out of ammunition. Fortune favored the group as the bullets successfully eliminated every ant in sight. Observed that these creatures were more than just insects, they were monsters. The enormous cavern revealed itself not simply as a cave, but as the lair where gigantic ants had built their nest. Given the overwhelming number of enemies, realizes their current arsenal won't be enough. He proposes that they retreat to reorganize, offering to fetch additional ammunition. Acknowledges the need for more bullets and feels energized by her support. However, insists on handling the situation alone, which leaves anxious. She reminds him that safety is at stake and there is no time to lose. The girl charges forward impulsively, showing little regard for caution. Her motivation goes beyond simply rescuing someone she cares about. The wound on her back, a mark of betrayal, hints at deeper reasons. Recognizes that this is not the right time to hesitate, and if preventing her isn't possible, he must support her actions instead. Seeing the ant motionless on the floor, turns to and reveals that he has come up with a strategy. He wondered aloud whether she would entrust her life to him. With a confident smile, assured him that her life was now his responsibility. The group slipped the ant helmets onto their heads and continued their journey deeper into the cave, each of them now sporting those unsettling, bug-like headpieces. Thinks that ants rely on smells to recognize their foes. One of the ants begins inching forward. If someone is covered in ant goo, the ants will likely believe they are an ally. If their disguise failed, the ant would alert its allies, putting them in serious danger. The ant moved directly in front of and began to sniff curiously at him. The ant wanders by without paying them any attention, clearly showing no interest. They realized their next step was to continue deeper in search of. As they advanced, the tunnels of the enormous ant nest grew darker and more ominous. Suddenly, a horrifying sight confronted them. Several unconscious girls lay scattered around, victims who had been abducted and imprisoned in this underground lair. It became clear that all the missing girls from the city had survived, though their condition was dire. While scanning the area, Met's gaze, having noticed a disturbing detail. The ants were using the captive girls as hosts for their eggs. Sadly, a few lifeless forms behind them showed the grim fate of those who had not survived. It appeared that the ants became food as soon as the eggs hatched, essentially providing a meal for their own young. At that moment, noticed. Lay unconscious, caught in the same trap as the others. Fortunately, none of the creature's eggs had been placed on her yet. The rescuers remained determined, certain they would manage to help every captive in the cavern. As they released from her bonds, she began to regain consciousness, confusion clouding her thoughts as she tried to recall her surroundings. It soon dawned on her that she was deep inside a cave, caught up in something truly strange. Meanwhile, took it upon himself to scatter the scent of the ants throughout the chamber, hoping this trick would allow them to slip away unnoticed. Without warning, lashed out with a powerful kick, launching him through the air. As the sound of his voice reached her ears, she realized something familiar about it. The costume's ant head tumbled off, revealing beneath the disguise. Nearby, urged that they were out of time and insisted they needed to escape quickly, bringing all the girls with them. They are resolute in their efforts to break free from the confines of the ant nest. Delivered a powerful punch that shattered the ground, creating an escape route for the group. Expressed relief, believing they would finally leave with the girls, but questioned the whereabouts of the others. She felt completely lost in her surroundings, overwhelmed by the size of the area. One of the girls explained to the others that they were actually inside a castle. More specifically, they stood on the first floor of the main castle. The girl shared this information confidently, as she had once been employed there. However, someone important was not present. The princess of the central city was gone, having been kidnapped by the monsters. Erica reacted with surprise, thinking that if what she heard was accurate, it would be a major event, yet she had heard nothing about it. Despite Erica's doubts, the other girl insisted she was certain. Meanwhile, the princess remained trapped. Hurriedly explained that every living woman had been taken. The girl imagined the ants hauling her away to a shadowy, underground prison. Despite everything, she remained sure the princess had survived. Feeling energized, declared her plan to save the princess with help. To begin, she smeared ant fluid over, preparing them both to slip quietly through the ant nest without attracting attention. Afterward, she coats herself in the sticky substance as well, eager to claim the tempting reward that awaits her. Chooses to assist as she covers herself in ant goo. The rest of the women relax nearby, waiting for them to finish preparing. However, grows uncomfortable with his assistance and reacts by gripping his head tightly. Walks over and announces her intention to join, expressing her dissatisfaction with the current situation. Together, they prepare themselves to re-enter the ant nest. Meanwhile, guards discover the entrance to the ant den. Bursting inside, they become enraged upon realizing that has already defeated the previous guards. As they made their way downward, the group encountered an enormous ant. The creature quickly overpowered one of them, leaving that person badly beaten. Unable to withstand the situation, he faltered as an army of ants arrived to complete the task. Meanwhile, inside the palace, seized a sword from a nearby suit of armor, preparing herself for battle. Drenched in ant pheromones, seemed to have an easy path ahead. Pointed out that only one final challenge remained before they could leave. Just then, someone called out to him. A woman who had once served as the princess's maid, clutching a piece of the princess's clothing and wondering if it could be of use. Eagerly took the garment, certain it would be invaluable. Their dog could use the scent to track down the princess. The loyal pup quickly began to lead the group. The group continued deeper into the ant nest, moving steadily ahead. Because of the pheromones, the ants ignored them completely, walking by without a second glance. With some assistance, was able to climb up to even the tallest places. The dog continued to explore its surroundings, nose pressed to the ground as it searched for interesting scents. Once they squeezed their way through a gap in the ant nest, the group found themselves in a wide, open space. In front of them, a huge swarm of ants had gathered, hinting that something important was happening. Notices the commotion as she sees the ants carrying their eggs out into the open. The arrival of the queen became unmistakably clear. Observed that just a single female remained in the nest, realizing he could eliminate her to resolve the situation, but urged him to stay calm. In the darkness, someone dangled helplessly, yet struggled to identify the person due to the lack of light. To get a better view, activated the night vision feature on his weapon. Quickly deduces that the figure is most likely the princess. Prepares to eliminate the queen with a precise shot, but stops him. She observes that ants are not the type to restrain the princess with ropes, suggesting that another threat is hidden nearby. Realizing this, they understand they must investigate the situation further. Wondered aloud if noticed anything unusual, prompting him to point out a figure that resembled a person. Curious, picked up the weapon and decided to investigate on her own. She discovered several men behaving strangely, their heads completely covered in cloth. The group of troublemakers would go to any lengths for a reward, even using their ability to command insects and monsters for their schemes. Narrowed his eyes, carefully observing the unfolding situation. It soon became clear to him that the queen was trapped by stakes, leading him to suspect that the group intended to construct an anthill beneath the central castle. Once more, suggested eliminating the entire crew, but firmly disagreed. She was fine with him defeating most of them, but insisted that at least one should be spared. Since discovering the identity of their leader and the nature of their mission might earn a generous reward from the king, decided to let one of them survive. He wondered aloud if it was time to fire, and responded enthusiastically, signaling him to go ahead and deal with their enemies. Excitement filled her voice as she encouraged him to eliminate the threatening figures. Took aim and struck one of the bizarre attackers squarely in the head. Panic erupted among the group as they scrambled to understand the sudden assault. However, confusion barely had time to settle before another member of the group was struck as well. Realizes that searching for the shooter's location would be pointless. The attacker is firing from a great distance under the cover of darkness, and the people in that world are completely unprepared to comprehend such tactics. And hurriedly rushed to collect their most valuable belongings, while lingered behind them, vigilantly watching their rear. Suddenly, one of the men let out a strange sound, and a strange creature emerged behind him. Towering over them was an enormous mantis, which immediately lunged toward. Without hesitation, moved in front of intercepting one of the creature's strikes. None of them could identify the mysterious creature before them. With precise aim, struck the mantis directly in one of its eyes. Despite its battered state, the creature continued to struggle, relentlessly attempting to lash out at the girls. From a safe distance, stared in disbelief, shocked that the monster remained upright despite taking a bullet to the head. The others hurriedly retreated, with quickly following in pursuit. At the same time, attacked, aiming a blow at one of the mantis creature's legs. Continued to fire at the beast, as the creature finally collapsed, prepared to strike with her weapon. She attempts to thrust her sword at the enormous mantis, yet the weapon refuses to respond as she intends. A voice called out, warning her to stay back, appeared and launched a strong kick, driving the sword deep into the monster, followed up with a final strike to its head, finishing the creature. Watched in awe, thoroughly impressed by their teamwork. The mantis collapses to the ground, showing no signs of life. Exhausted but astonished by their victory, the girls can hardly believe they managed to defeat such a creature. Trusting the dog's instincts, they continue to trail behind it for direction. Meanwhile, the other boys who had been present have already fled the scene, and an increasingly strong odor fills the air, likely meant to mask the group's movements. Burns with frustration over letting the others escape. Still, they manage to rescue the princess, which offers some consolation. Decides he will shoot the rope binding the princess, instructing the two girls to support her as he does so. Signals that they are prepared, which excites. Together, the observed how adorable looked, amazed that he had managed to stay safe through everything. Felt a swell of pride for her friend's accomplishments. Meanwhile, the princess began to regain consciousness and looked around, confused about her surroundings. Leaned in to see if the girl was awake and quietly questioned if this really was the princess. Without warning, the princess reached out and pulled into her arms. She embraced him tightly, expressing her gratitude for saving her. Shyly clarified that he hadn't acted alone. As the princess took a good look at him, she was struck by how cute he was and suddenly wanted to protect him forever. Overjoyed, she continued to cuddle. The king wondered aloud whether they truly desired just a single sword and questioned their certainty. Before could respond, quickly confirmed their choice. Accepting their answer, the king permitted them to select any sword within the castle and expressed her gratitude. Afterward, requested that the princess return, explaining that he was an important member of their group. However, the princess refused, insisting that was absolutely adorable and declaring her intention to keep him with her forever. She reassured the girls that there was no need for them to be concerned about meals or washing up, promising that she would give the royal treatment. The king inquired whether they desired a sword forged from, prompting to confirm that was precisely their request. However, voiced concerns about the weapon's expense, while clarified she had only asked for a sword, emphasizing that they had risked their lives for this mission. Although the king expressed willingness to provide a blade, he admitted he was unable to do so. He explained that the smith who had acquired in the central city had journeyed to the mountains and subsequently disappeared. Realized they might need to request a different kind of sword, but questioned the king about when the smith had vanished. The king replied that it had happened about a week prior, then asked if a rescue suggested that should come along with them, warning that he might get into big trouble otherwise. After that, the main character slid off the princess's lap and walked over to join the girls. He claims his desire to keep them safe stems from his belief that they truly rely on him. Grew frustrated with his behavior, showing clear annoyance. Determined to refocus the team, she instructed everyone to prepare themselves for the upcoming mission. The city had come alive once more, its streets filled with activity as fear faded from the minds of its residents. Walked along the sidewalk beside, moving with ease as if nothing troubled her. Recalled how the area used to seem incredibly suspicious in the past. Erica's gaze landed on a truffle nestled among the vendor's goods. Deciding to claim it, she informed the vendor of her intent to purchase, prompting a surprised reaction from him. The merchant announced the cost as 100 gold coins, complained about the high price, while remarked that everything seemed to be getting more expensive. The merchant explained that the truffle was so costly because it could only be found on mountain, a place from which no one ever returned. The group paused before the towering mountain and marveled at its immense size, realizing it was far larger than she had imagined. Reassured the others that climbing to the peak was unnecessary. Their goal was simply to reach the area where the truffles grew. Questioned whether this detour might lead them too far from their original mission, but insisted on seizing the opportunity presented to them. Mountain was renowned as one of the rare locations worldwide where these valuable truffles could be found. The prospect of finding enough truffles to earn a substantial profit was tempting, but the group remained wary, knowing few adventurers ever returned, and that tales of dangerous monsters prowling the area were common. Voiced concern. Right now, his main concern is the fact that hardly anyone ever returns from that mountain. As they made their way up the slope, began to fall back from the group. His small size left him struggling, fatigue evident with every step. Observed his slow pace and realized his short legs were to blame. Still, she remembered hearing that orcs like him could travel impressive distances when searching for prey. In truth, his former life had been that of a man in his 30s, and he hadn't tackled a mountain since a hiking trip back in his high school days. The ascent was becoming more difficult. The group makes their way past a towering waterfall, its roar echoing around them. During their journey, they pause briefly to drink some water and enjoy a quick bite to eat. Grumbled about how slowly the journey was going, while remarked that they likely had a considerable distance left to travel. Suddenly, something draws the dog's focus. Without warning, the dog dashes ahead, prompting to realize they might be much closer to their goal than she'd assumed. She immediately races after the dog, motivated by her desire for profit. The dog begins to dig with urgency in a particular patch of earth. Eagerly joins in, clawing at the soil alongside the animal. At last, her efforts are rewarded when she uncovers the coveted truffle she had been seeking. Mofo announces the discovery of yet another truffle, leading to the realization that they have stumbled upon a spot rich with these rare fungi, a true windfall. The main character reflects on how unexpectedly simple the task turned out to be, given the notorious rarity of such. Erica's thoughts raced as confusion clouded her mind, uncertain of her whereabouts. As her eyelids fluttered open, the harsh reality hit her. She was confined, unable to budge an inch. Scanning her surroundings, she noticed that she was not alone. Several other girls were also ensnared, equally helpless. Without warning, enormous ants began to move in, drawing nearer with every second. The attackers moved in dangerously near to her, launching an assault on everyone present. Seeing the chaos unfold, Erica panicked, terrified of what could happen next. An ant crept closer to her, prompting a frightened scream as she attempted to drive the insect away. The creature remains motionless, edging nearer to the girl. Its sharp legs begin to scrape against her, putting her in a difficult and dangerous situation. Without warning, Erica notices a group of boys relaxing behind the ant. Recognized the same guys she had defeated in the past. Once again, they were making fun of her, mocking and calling the situation embarrassing. Was overcome by fear and released a high-pitched scream, sharp enough to pierce the silence like breaking glass. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement except for who was on the verge of a meltdown. To her friends, everything unfolding was simply a vivid dream playing out in his mind. At the same time, a strange, colorful liquid for the mushrooms began to seep from her. Soon after, became the next person to enter a dream state. As she became aware of her surroundings, she found herself encircled by a group of boys. She wore the attire of a dancer traveling with the lamb's caravan, yet something about the scene felt undeniably wrong. Beside her, began slipping into her unseen attire. She encouraged to participate and eagerly agreed. In almost no time, finds herself dressed in completely different clothes. Uncomfortable and self-conscious, she can't shake off the weird atmosphere. Around her, the lamb's group can hardly contain their enthusiasm as the situation spirals. At the same time, the lamb reaches out with its tentacles and grabs, causing her anxiety to spike. Excitement filled the air as the crowd enthusiastically supported the unfolding drama. As drifted through her dream, she accidentally let the precious liquid for the mushroom slip from her grasp. The mushroom creatures radiated excitement, clearly pleased their wishes were being fulfilled. Meanwhile, the lamb's tentacles coiled firmly around, holding her in place. The audience roared with anticipation, eager to witness the girl's suffering. Desperately struggled to escape, her voice ringing out in another sharp scream that did nothing to stop the lamb. One of the lambs moved in, grabbing a fistful of her hair and giving it a cruel tug. Completely out of her depth, had no idea how to deal with a situation like this, never having faced anything similar before. Feeling threatened by the man pestering her, sank her teeth into him. His reaction was immediate and loud, his cry echoing as though he had endured a sharp pain. Succeeded in tearing off a small bit of his flesh, which she quickly spat out, unsettled by the strange flavor lingering in her mouth. Suddenly she jolted awake, her heart racing. Unfamiliar, lively mushrooms surrounded her, their movements animated as if they were celebrating. Turning her head, noticed lying unconscious nearby. Wondered about the identity of the strange mushrooms, surprising them when she awoke. Their leader quickly reassured the group, confident he could handle the situation. Meanwhile, a pounding headache throbbed in skull as she stood up and hurried after. The mushroom began to slam its head repeatedly, sending clouds of toxins swirling through the air. As inhaled the fumes, she collapsed once more, overcome by the poison. In the commotion, one of the mushrooms stumbled backward and collided with. The cluster of mushrooms buzzed with excitement, and their leader signaled for it to be returned to her original spot. Working together, the mushrooms dragged back while watched in confusion, struggling to understand the bizarre situation unfolding around him. The mushrooms resumed their strange ritual, now including both and tried to piece together what was happening, questioning what kind of dream or nightmare they had fallen into. Looking for help. Using his unique ability, he unearthed a hidden weapon from beneath the soil. Without wasting any time, he brushed away the dirt clinging to it. The weapon turned out to be ideal for striking several opponents who were nearby. While she slept, Erica found herself once again under attack by the ant in her dream. She stood in a haze of confusion, her mind spinning as the group of boys moved closer, intent on confronting her. Their expressions made it clear they wanted revenge for the way she had acted toward them. The group remained determined to get their revenge at any cost. As they launched their assault, terrified cries filled the air. One of the attackers struck her while the rest stood by, observing the scene. At the same time, outside of this world, the enchanted liquid from the mushrooms surged wildly. The mushrooms reveled in their triumphant victory that day. Observed the scene with curiosity, trying to figure out the reason the mushrooms were gathering the enchanting liquid. At the same time, found herself trapped in a haunting dream. In an instant, she was transported back to the familiar streets of the West Village. A shout from behind alerts her to the approaching orcs. Enormous orcs sweep through the town, capturing young women as they go. Filled with anger, demands that the orc release the girl. The towering beast questions her bravery, surprised that she would confront him by herself. All at once, her outfit transformed, and her sword disappeared without a trace. The orcs claim that they are able to capture her as well. Consented to go with them on the condition that the other girls would be released. The orc responded that he would keep his word, but only if got down on her knees and pleaded for their freedom. Despite all her past actions, repaying that much was the very minimum she could offer. Ultimately, the girl's fate would be sealed unless submitted. Choosing to protect them, dropped to her knees and pleaded with the orcs to spare her friends. In response, the monstrous creature pressed its foot down on his head, declaring that her persistence left him with only one option. Rather than capturing the other girls, he decided they would take the warrior instead. At the same time, the enchanted liquid surged with greater intensity, while the mushrooms appeared to be rejoicing, as if caught up in a festive celebration. Rise awoke drenched in sweat after a terrifying nightmare, while the mushrooms around him radiated excitement and joy. Found himself curious about the purpose of the strange liquid and what would happen with it. The leader among the mushrooms, clearly in charge, announced that it was time for everyone to restore their strength. Without hesitation, he gulped down every drop of the liquid. Almost immediately after finishing, a noticeable change came over him. The mushroom guru suddenly transformed, growing until he loomed above the forest like a living skyscraper. His limbs became solid and enormous, turning him into an awe-inspiring figure. In front of the crowd, he stood as a gigantic mushroom, showing off his incredible strength. Stands frozen in disbelief, unable to comprehend the scene before him. Meanwhile, the mushroom urgently commands everyone to spring into action and begin the fight. The rest of the mushrooms watched with excitement, their voices raised in encouragement as they supported him from the edge of the scene. Seizing the opportunity, chooses to take care of the remaining threats and save the girls. The main character demands that the captors release the girls, prompting the mushroom to announce that they have no further interest in her. Puzzled by the situation, wonders aloud about what is really happening. The mushroom clarifies that they have come to take back both the truffle cache and the mine. According to the mushrooms, the trolls have been monopolizing the entire mountain, but in truth, genuine truffles only grow at the very summit. The mushrooms reveal that the truffles discovered by the trolls were actually planted there by the mushrooms themselves. Grows interested in the mine. The mushroom goes on to mention that while there is indeed a mine at the top, its situation is more complex than it first appears. The well-being of the mountain depended on the power of those who ruled over it and kept others beneath them. Slowly regained consciousness, confusion clouding her mind as she tried to understand her surroundings. Just as the mushroom prepared to reveal some important information, interrupted by giving him a swift kick. Couldn't hide his excitement now that both and were awake and alert. Still bewildered, wanted to know what was happening around her. Rise wondered to himself about the strange newcomers. Far away in the mountains, the trolls feasted on elusive truffles, while one troll complained that he was tired of them. He craved a hearty meal, his mouth watering at the thought of the mushrooms growing below. The trolls should have been feasting on the mountain's bounty. However, one of them reminded the others that they were forbidden from doing so, as their duty was to guard the precious truffles. Because of this responsibility, they remained in place, unable to indulge. A troll burst into the room, shouting that terrible news had arrived. A huge mushroom was heading their way. The troll chief reacted with anger, demanding to know how a mere mushroom could have the nerve to threaten them. He quickly consumes a hidden elixir. He grows to an enormous size and defeats the mushroom. At the same time, the mushroom rushed forward, determined to finish what had started. Deep within the forest, a colossal troll and an enormous mushroom collided, their immense forms battling for dominance among the ancient trees. The mushroom declared its intention to destroy the troll and cook him over a fire. In response, the troll immediately shot back with his own threat. While this heated exchange unfolded, watched the confrontation begin, feeling completely unsure of how to react. In contrast, the girls instantly understood the situation. The truffle they were searching for could only be found close to the mountain's summit, but their path was obstructed by the presence of crystal trolls. Ordered to end the man's life. They remained vigilant, focusing their attention on the troll's head. It appeared that the mineral forming on its surface was likely. Found himself completely astonished, while mirrored his surprise. Guessed that the blacksmith most likely climbed up to claim that valuable stone. Appeared full of excitement, expressing how thrilled she would be if managed to defeat the troll. But before anything can happen, moves to block his path, insisting there's no justification for attacking the troll. She reminds everyone that such an action would be completely wrong. Also emphasizes how important it is to remain neutral in this conflict. Shares her viewpoint, but the temptation of the nearby truffle and makes the decision difficult. The mushroom rises above the group, urging them to remain calm and avoid making any hasty decisions. Wonders aloud about the reason the giants remain motionless. The mushroom assessed the scenario carefully, aware that even the slightest action might lead to immediate defeat, a situation they referred to as checkmate. Meanwhile, Erica believed that continuing these negotiations was useless and thought someone should simply admit defeat. The trolls appeared, expressing interest in the possibility of negotiation. One troll admitted that the group had grown weary of truffles and was eager to break the long-standing dominance over them, making them willing to discuss terms. Meanwhile, the mushroom muttered that describing the situation as a monopoly was overly generous, and questioned whether the trolls had any justification for their actions. The troll drops to one knee before the mushroom, lowering himself enough to look the mushroom straight in the eyes. From the very start, the group had worked tirelessly searching for truffles, which was what brought them to their current situation. However, things changed when a group of trolls appeared and began keeping all the truffles to themselves. The troll firmly denies the accusation, arguing that the master mushroom had actually been exploiting the truffles far too much, which angered the mountain god. The troll questions why they should be responsible for defending someone like that. They acted out of necessity, found himself puzzled by the mention of a mountain god. The troll proceeded to clarify that a powerful being had resided within the mountain since time immemorial and was its genuine master. No matter how much they might cooperate, facing this entity would be impossible for them. The truffles, the troll added, served as a valuable tribute to this mountain ruler. In response, the mushroom insisted he had never heard of any supposed mountain lord, and accused the troll of fabricating the story. The troll insulted the mushroom by calling it foolish, delivering the words with a harsh tone, and then demanded to know if the mushroom's actions were meant to provoke a war. Suddenly intervened, urging everyone to calm down and suggesting that they put an end to the argument. She pointed out that their leaders were already in conflict, warning them not to interfere and make things worse. Hearing this, both the troll and the mushroom nodded in agreement, as if they believed they had just brought about harmony on a grand scale. Lightened the mood with a joke about deserving a medal for always keeping the peace. Simply brushed off the compliment, insisting it was nothing special. If everything works out as planned, they might be able to secure both the and the truffle. The troll welcomed the group to see everything firsthand. As they arrived at a torchlit area, they discovered an enormous pile of truffles. Upon spotting the abundance of truffles, the mushroom became visibly distressed. The troll explained that today was the day for offerings. Without warning, the earth began to tremble, and the troll cautioned that the Lord was on his way. Appeared bewildered as she tried to make sense of the situation. Simply lifted her shoulders, clearly just as puzzled. Despite their confusion, it was obvious that the enormous troll was terrified. Suddenly, a gigantic beast erupted from beneath the earth. Stares in shock, realizing that the figure before him is none other than the mountain's ruler. The hulking creature shuffled toward the mound of truffles, its heavy steps shaking the ground. Meanwhile, the mushroom was seized by terror, convinced that doom was inevitable for everyone. The creature simply began devouring the truffles, treating them as if they were nothing more than a casual snack. The troll explains that most of his kind have already been destroyed by the Lord, and warns that confronting him is extremely dangerous. Finds the tale unbelievable, recalling a legend where victory required making the creature consume a potion. The troll chuckles at this, insisting that the Lord never drinks. However, he adds that if they manage to defeat the enormous centipede, the truffles will finally be liberated. Reached for one of his ranged weapons, preparing to take charge of the situation. With a playful tone, he wondered to himself whether the centipede or a lamb would prove stronger. Before he could act, positioned herself between him and the threat, urging him to calm down and wait. Questioned if he could simply shoot the creature, but firmly refused, insisting he take a closer look. Upon inspection, it became clear that the centipede's body was composed of human forms. Drew in a sharp breath, overwhelmed by shock at the sight. Quickly deduced that the missing people were likely trapped within the monstrous body, perhaps even the blacksmith they had been searching for. The centipede races by, but despite its speed, it crashes into both a mushroom and a troll. Realized just how narrowly they had escaped danger, while observed the creature's impressive speed. Meanwhile, another troll remarked that their lord was seething with anger. He believed the offering fell short of what was required. The creature lunged once more, its sharp appendages cutting the marshmallows cleanly in two. If this continued, the beast would soon defeat everyone. With a sudden burst of speed, the centipede rushed toward the group, causing and to steel themselves for the impending impact. The monstrous form drew dangerously near to. The individuals composing its body reached out, beginning to drag her inward. found herself nearly engulfed by the mass of people. The survivors cry out in confusion and desperation, their voices blending into a chaotic chorus. Quickly notices that none of them have died yet, recoils in shock, unable to believe that any of the people managed to live through this ordeal. The situation rapidly spirals out of control. Desperate hands stretch toward, clutching at her from all sides and yanking her this way and that. Within moments, both find themselves fused into the enormous, centipede-like creature's body. Panicked, his nerves getting the best of him. Both girls appeared to be in a state of despair. They both shouted desperately, calling out to and pleading for assistance. The massive centipede towered above the last few trolls and the main character. Trembled with fear as the troll explained that nothing could be done. The troll advised him to remain calm, assuring him this situation affected only humans. Despite the dire circumstances, the main character refused to lose hope, observing that the centipede kept its victims alive even as it absorbed them. Realizing there might be a way to rescue everyone, he began to devise a plan. Gripped his weapon, preparing himself for action. He is convinced that intense concentration, fueled by his passion for weaponry, will guide him to the target. At that moment, the main character notices a small centipede orchestrating everything behind the scenes. The creature's head revealed a cluster of human bodies tangled together at its center. Yet ultimately, at its core, there was nothing more than a small centipede. Carefully lines up the target and fires a shot. His aim proved true as the small creature was struck directly. In an instant, the individuals forming the giant centipede's body were sent flying through the air. They tumbled in every direction, with and among them. Could barely grasp that he had managed to succeed. High on the mountain, chaos erupted as the crowd grasped the seriousness of the situation. Fear drove people to scatter, many racing downhill toward the city in desperate attempts to escape. Although the giant centipede had been defeated, every person who had been trapped inside remained terrified by the ordeal. Observed that the group was eager to leave as soon as possible, clearly relieved to have escaped their previous predicament. The giants expressed their gratitude for defeating the Lord, acknowledging the group's crucial help. Wondered aloud if the giants planned to continue fighting, but the mushroom explained that there was no longer any need for conflict. The giant troll bent down, revealing a piece of resting atop his head, and announced that he had a reward for them. Its excitement was obvious as she realized what was being offered, and the group quickly began discussing possible ways to retrieve from the troll. Suddenly, a girl approached, confidently offering to remove for them. Her enthusiasm was infectious as she marveled at the purity. Appeared confused, unable to catch what was being said. Meanwhile, spoke up, explaining that had volunteered to assist with the extraction. The girl looked at with admiration. Eagerly gathered him into her arms, her curiosity piqued by the fact that an orc could speak. Delight shimmered in her expression as she processed this new revelation. She went on to announce her name, the blacksmith hailing from the central city. Recognition flickered in his eyes as he realized she must be the woman everyone was searching for. With a cheerful grin, expressed how glad she was to finally meet. Meanwhile, the enormous troll shifted restlessly, grumbling that his current posture was becoming increasingly unbearable. Felt a surge of excitement and quickly agreed, while questioned whether she had brought her equipment. In response, the girl gave a confident nod and began to recite an incantation. Instantly, a collection of tools appeared before her, glowing as if conjured by magic. Observed in amazement as the tools emerged from the earth and remarked that clearly possessed transmutation abilities. Recalled rumors about a blacksmith from the central city who was said to be a rare alchemist. Standing bravely before the towering troll, prepared herself, while doubted that such small tools could make any difference. The girl began to chant another enigmatic spell, her eyes widening with intensity. Stood in awe, completely astonished by what was unfolding before him. Lifted her tools and struck the piece of embedded in the massive troll's head with tremendous force. Calmly explained that the glowing light was a typical occurrence during extraction, the fractured under the blow. Wondered how a blacksmith who was also an alchemist could manage to break such a notoriously strong material. The large chunk tumbled to the ground. Both were left without words. Exhausted, declared she was finished, while burst into a celebratory dance as if they had just claimed victory. The mushrooms approached the group, reminding them that they still had a debt to repay. To make it up to them, the mushrooms offered some truffles as a token of appreciation. Erica expressed her gratitude for the thoughtful gesture. The mushroom mentioned that anyone interested in experiencing more wild dreams could reach out to them. Meanwhile, the troll inquired about the name of the mushroom's clan. Begins to explain that they aren't actually a clan, but before she can finish, interrupts her. He suggests that the group should be named the Squad. The group began their journey back toward the city. Inside a bustling tavern, glanced around at the crowded space while observed how quickly he was eating, remarking on his rapid pace. Commented that, following their recent mission, it was no surprise was so hungry. Found herself amazed at how such a small person could eat so much food. Quietly asked if she could join the group, but made sure everyone heard by repeating her question more loudly. To start a conversation, explained that they were searching for the blacksmith. Suddenly, someone took hold of his hand. It was, who approached with a favor to ask. Wondered if the blacksmith might be able to make her a sword. Immediately offered to make one free of charge as thanks for having her life saved, mentioning she already had the materials. Suggested that the blacksmith might be clever enough to request any price from the king, who would surely agree to pay it. Rise. In honor of the occasion, everyone lifts their glasses high, joining together in a cheerful toast. The group enjoyed the remainder of their meal, sharing laughter and stories as they grew more comfortable with one another. Afterward, they made their way to the palace to relax. Was amazed when he saw the enormous gaming room reserved exclusively for them. Explained that the king had given it to them as a present, and she emphasized the importance of taking full advantage of the opportunity. Following that event, the group attends an extravagant feast, quietly wishes that would accompany them. Upon reaching the blacksmith's workshop, his face brightens with excitement. She confidently gestures that she requires only 7 days to forge an extraordinary sword. It is at this moment that his voice rings out clearly for the first time, capturing everyone's attention. Suspects her confidence in her abilities is at an all-time high. Without warning, another person enters the game room. The princess appeared, her face lit up with happiness at being present. Her enthusiasm soared when she spotted, clearly impressed by him. Curious, she wondered aloud if he would be staying for a while. Expressing her desire to keep him close, she wished for to become her pet and spend all his time with her. As the group of girls enjoyed a moment of leisure, the princess gently stroked his fur. The girls sitting nearby advised everyone to pay no attention to them, while the princess clarified that the others acted as her guards to prevent another kidnapping. However, she admitted that having them around meant she could no longer do as she pleased whenever she wanted. Expresses her hope that everything will have calmed down before they leave. Wondered aloud about Erica's strange mood, prompting Erica to confess her fear that the central city was on the verge of collapse. Curious, shot her a questioning look, unsure what Erica meant. Erica then explained that while they were beneath the city, they had seen the creator. Despite their efforts, the others slipped away, leaving them with no way to intervene. Assumed that the attackers were likely mercenaries working for someone else, convinced there was a mastermind controlling them. Reminded her that they still hadn't discovered the person responsible for all the trouble. Noted that the king appeared uninterested in uncovering the true culprit. Those who witnessed the masterminds behind the kidnappings ended up exiled to Pirol Mountain. With the real culprit still at large, that place would not remain safe for much longer, yet the king made no effort to investigate. Pointed out that the security at both the city's border and the main gate appeared strong, but remained skeptical, believing that effective protection was impossible without first identifying the true enemy. If it were up to her, she would focus on tracking down the kidnapper before anything else. Ultimately dismissed the issue as a matter for the city, not for them, but refused to let it go. Did not want to spend the week simply wishing for nothing bad to happen, then leave quietly. The princess found herself in a state of panic over the very same issue, while her sidekick struggled to keep composure. Desperate, the princess turned to, pleading for assistance in removing a stubborn creature that had latched onto her. Anxiety overwhelmed her, and felt intense pressure as he broke out in a nervous sweat. He reached for the creature, only to discover it was far more difficult to remove than he had anticipated. Determined, he used every effort at his disposal to help her. Finally, with renewed energy, succeeded in pulling the pesky creature off the princess. Now found herself relying on him, unable to get rid of her own shadow. Quickly stepped forward, requesting that assist her as well. Even the princess's attendants became involved in the situation. found himself overwhelmed by the flood of responsibilities, sweat beading on his brow. Despite his exhaustion, he managed to rescue each of the girls from their troublesome little monsters. Once his efforts were finished, fatigue completely him. Meanwhile, the princess's attendant nervously fidgeted and quickly apologized, admitting that they had completely forgotten to remove the cleaning eels from the area. Felt a sense of relief upon realizing that there was no elaborate scheme targeting the city. However, suddenly rose to her feet and summoned the princess's attention. The princess glanced her way, silently inquiring what wanted. In response, explained that she had a matter to report and requested the princess deliver her message to the committed wholeheartedly, leaving aware that she had no other options. Wanted to know more about the task of finding the person responsible and wondered if they had discovered any clues. Felt irritated that seemed to focus only when Rai's safety was at risk. Despite this, they did have something to go on. A clue had emerged when someone broke into the palace's wine cellar during the chaos of the ant attack. Only a single variety of wine had disappeared, leading them to deduce that whoever orchestrated the incident must prefer that particular wine above all others. Mo wondered aloud how that would be beneficial. Erica lost her patience with him and remarked that he wasn't exactly the brightest person around. The type of wine she was searching for was rare in that area, so she began making inquiries and discovered that just 2 wineries existed close to the city. By watching those specific areas closely, they could end up encountering the person they are searching for. Considered the clue promising, though he acknowledged it might not amount to anything. Despite the uncertainty, it remained their sole option. Observed that the wineries lay in different directions, prompting to note that they couldn't cover both at the same time. Proposed dividing into 2 teams but protested since there were only 3 people. Then someone remembered they had the dog as well, and partnered up, leaving to handle the dog alone. The main character was clearly displeased with this arrangement. Despite everything, he makes his way to the destination. 2 days had passed since they left the heart of the city, making every step in hiding a real struggle. Now he had finally discovered the stash containing the rare wine. To avoid alarming their mark, they needed to stay discreet. Without warning, a shout broke the silence. A visibly enraged woman confronted the owner of the winery, demanding to know why he was concealing the kidnapper's whereabouts. The man defended himself, claiming he was nothing more than a wine merchant and had no other knowledge. Meanwhile, the young woman shouted in distress, pointing out that innocent people were being harmed. Approached calmly, urging her to relax and stop drawing attention. Startled by the sight of an orc, she recoiled and insulted him, calling him a small, aggressive beast. In his mind, her attitude seemed unbearably proud, and he pointed out that her sword was too short to even reach him. She retorted that an orc from that distance couldn't harm her, and besides, he shouldn't have the ability to speak at all. Confidently, she thought she could defeat him before he finished a single word. Without warning, shot his pistol and declared that her threats were unnecessary. The bullet struck her armor before she even managed to draw her sword, leaving her. Quickly realized the girl's impressive speed. Remembering his first encounter with, he had prepared himself and adapted his tactics, now handling the situation like an expert. His swift maneuver caught the girl completely off guard. After completing his role, immediately shifted back into an aggressive stance and launched a calculated attack that narrowly missed its target. The girl could hardly believe what had just happened. The nearby workers watched the intense exchange with admiration. Confidently reminded everyone that even the bravest knight is no match for a skilled fighter with a weapon. The girl was astonished at how easily had disrupted her technique. He acknowledged her quick reflexes and silently admitted that lessons had saved him from defeat. Brenda decided to reintroduce herself, letting everyone know her name was Brenda and that she came from the north. She offered an apology for her earlier attitude, admitting that her temper had gotten out of control. Reflected on how impressively Brenda had handled herself during the battle. Brenda brushed off the compliment, explaining that there was no need to bring it up, but revealed that the Emerald Princess from her homeland had also been kidnapped by the same villain. Was stunned by the revelation, amazed at how unbelievable it was that the princess from Central City had disappeared in a similar way. Brenda suspected that all of this was part of a much bigger scheme and casually requested more wine. Brenda began to quarrel with the dog but interrupted her, urging her to wait. He pointed out that the drink emitted an unusual odor, emphasized just how strange the drink smelled, prompting Brenda to question the whereabouts of the server. However, the server had already vanished by that time. Fortunately, the dog had picked up the scent, enabling them to follow his trail. Believed it was fortunate their opponent had appeared, yet after what the server attempted, the main character grew increasingly anxious about and. At the second winery, leisurely enjoyed a glass of wine, appearing completely relaxed. She was tasting this variety for the first time and found herself thoroughly impressed by its flavor. Thought the wine seemed far superior to what the current guests deserved. Meanwhile, observed a group forming nearby, suspecting that some local event might be taking place. Signaled for another pour, prompting a staff member to approach and refill their glasses. Notices that the flavor of the wine stands out from what she expected. Shares her observation, confirming the difference. The man with them wonders aloud if they have finished their drinks. At that moment, suddenly recognizes him as the adversary they have been searching for. Before could make a move, he commanded them to dance, and responded by moving into a gentle, slow dance, confused by their own actions and unsure of the reason behind them. The young man instructed everyone to rise and demonstrate their dance skills for the audience. Energized by the challenge, began to move with greater enthusiasm, which excited the crowd even more. The young man instructed the group to walk confidently through the hallway, prompting them to begin moving as he directed. While they walked past, others began to bother them. The man commanded them to climb onto the table and dance side by side. Even though they struggled to fight back, the power of his enchantment left them no choice but to obey. The audience is completely captivated by the energy radiating from the performers on stage. Their dance routines break new ground, impressing everyone with their originality and intensity. Their movements grew increasingly lively as they continued to dance, each step filled with greater enthusiasm. The group moved with an energy that seemed fueled by endless cans of Red Bull. The man demanded that they reveal their faces. The girls' faces flushed a deep red, outshining even the ripest tomato. Despite their embarrassment, they refused to hesitate. This was their moment to perform. In the distance, Brenda wondered aloud if had any idea where he was going. From her vantage point, she couldn't spot anyone, but she knew that moving any nearer would definitely give them away. The main character observed that the enemy appeared to be wandering aimlessly, and Brenda recognized this as a typical ploy to divert attention. Despite everything, they continued to trail after the dog, seeing no reason to stop. Eventually, realized that whoever they had been pursuing had ceased moving. The group decided to wait until the next day before making a move. Since their opponents had set up camp, it only made sense for them to do the same. Brenda eagerly agreed to this strategy. As the night wore on, the two rested by the flickering campfire, trying to get some sleep. However, Brenda found herself too excited to drift off, her mind racing with anticipation. Eager to confront the enemy as soon as possible, she suited up in her armor with confidence, treating it almost like a stylish accessory. Wasting no time, Brenda set out determinedly to rescue her princess. Meanwhile, and exhausted after dancing, had little energy left. Their captor demanded that they put on chains and blindfold. They gave in, reluctantly agreeing without much protest. The man pulls and along, leaving them completely unaware of their destination. As they grumble in protest, he hushes them and insists they trust him. Both girls, tied up and blindfolded, feel like they're trapped in a real-life escape room. Eventually, he leads them onto a club stage, where they're expected to dance before an excited audience. And each moved to their own rhythm, dancing alone on the floor, yet something seemed unfinished. They stood there, uncertain about the reason for their presence. The crowd's excitement continued to build, filling the room with energy reminiscent of a live concert. Meanwhile, the girls looked around, curious about whereabouts, guessing she might be daydreaming somewhere. As daylight breaks, manages to track down the city where Brenda is hidden, relying on the keen sense of his canine companion. He had advised Brenda to wait calmly until the next day, but she struggles with impatience. Meanwhile, the city is alive with excitement as an open show draws crowds from every corner. The main attraction is a high-stakes battle between a demon and a knight, igniting a frenzy of betting. Within the packed arena, Brenda watches with bated breath, her heart pounding in anticipation. Cranes his neck, trying to catch a clear view of the unfolding spectacle. He notices Brenda standing her ground against an enormous beast, and the situation appears dire. Determined, the girl shouts her promise to rescue the princess, while silently questions her choice of clothing. Meanwhile, in the crowd, A strange, enormous creature stood before Brenda, insisting that she perform for the audience. The creature promised that afterward, Brenda would have to battle her favorite pet, whatever that might be. Frustration boiled inside Brenda as she prepared herself for a confrontation. The enormous, altered bull moved with surprising agility, making it a formidable opponent. It lunged at Brenda, but she skillfully evaded its attack. Brenda attempted to slice off the creature's tongue, yet her strike failed completely. Her weapon had no effect on the monster, leaving her doubting the quality of the sword she wielded. Suddenly, the beast seized her blade and snapped it effortlessly. Without warning, it hoisted Brenda high above the ground, causing her heart to sink in fear. In a panic, Brenda yelled that it was all the other person's fault for giving her a useless sword, shifting the blame in a familiar way. Following her defeat in the battle, she was obliged to honor her wager, which required her to assume the role of the princess and endure the embarrassment of being humiliated before everyone. The audience erupts with excitement, eager for a moment that might leave her feeling humiliated. The atmosphere buzzes with anticipation and energy. The crowd fills the arena with a lively energy, their excitement almost overwhelming. Amid the commotion, the boss signals to his creature, suggesting that it's time to play. Responding to the command, the monster wraps itself around Brenda, tightening its grip as she struggles against the mounting force. At the same time, the audience erupts with excitement, their cheers as loud as a championship game. The man can't stop laughing, boasting that she's being embarrassed for all to see. The spectacle is intense. The creature tightens its grip around her, forcing a scream from her lips that pierces the air like broken glass. The creature suddenly turned Brenda upside down, leaving her wondering how she would ever be able to look the princess in the eye after such an embarrassing moment. At last, word of the grand event start echoes through the room, sending Brenda into a whirlwind of anxiety. All at once, she noticed his voice behind her as he announced his intention to assist. She refused any help, insisting everyone keep their distance. She had struck a bargain with the cruel man, and if she managed to defeat him, he would reveal secrets about the princess. Having already lost everything to him through gambling, she was left with nothing but her own body to wager. This battle became her final opportunity. Summoning every ounce of determination, Brenda mustered her remaining strength and fought to escape. She found herself forced to battle alone, skillfully dodging the creature's lashing tongue and making a daring escape, a remarkable feat. The creature stared in astonishment, while the crowd among them could hardly believe what they were seeing. Determined to protect the princess, Brenda prepared herself to battle without hesitation. She plunges the remains of her sword deep into her foe's skull, creating a breathtaking and unforgettable moment. The creature emitted a low, guttural sound before collapsing onto the earth, clearly vanquished. Stood in shock, unable to process what had just happened. The crowd buzzed with excitement, their cheers rising in celebration of Brenda's impressive display of strength. Seething with anger, she reminded the man that she had honored her end of the bargain and demanded to know the princess's location. He stared in disbelief at the ruins of his bull, unable to accept its defeat in battle. Yet he refused to admit defeat, insisting the challenge was not yet finished. Suddenly, the enormous bull began to split open, releasing a horde of tiny creatures. A swarm of insects emerged, darting directly toward Brenda. Confused, Brenda questioned why such creatures were hidden inside the giant bull, struggling to understand the situation. She desperately recalled their agreement, shouting that her only task was to defeat the bull. In response, the man coldly dismissed her protests, declaring that he had no intention of honoring any. He pushes open the arena gate, giving them a chance to escape. The organizer of the event stands in stunned silence, unable to find any words. Meanwhile, the security guards rush off in an attempt to pursue them. As they move, Brenda wonders aloud about their location and observes that it appears to be the monster hall. Suddenly, an idea strikes, and he begins firing at the cell doors, smashing them open to release the trapped creatures. As the group moved forward, the monsters suddenly lunged at the guards in a desperate attempt to break free. Only the terrified cries of the crowd fill the air. Brenda insists that locating the princess is her top priority. Couldn't understand why they were hesitating. Escaping seemed the most urgent thing to do. The dog guided them purposefully to a certain location, and both and Brenda trailed after the little animal. The pup led them up an enormous staircase. As they climbed, grew curious about their destination, while Brenda caught a faint, familiar aroma in the air. She realized she recognized the scent. It was the princess's favorite incense. Soon, they reached a door and wondered if the fragrance was coming from inside. Brenda hurried forward, flung open the door, and called out for the princess. Inside was stunned by the sight before him. A frightened girl sat nervously in a chair. A soldier burst through the door with a powerful kick, warning Brenda that escape was impossible and ordering her to stay put. Although Brenda was defenseless, she knew she had to help the princess get away. Determined, she volunteered to serve as a distraction so could lead the princess to safety. However, refused to abandon anyone, insisting they all stay together. Suddenly, the enormous pig appeared, vowing to defeat them immediately. The orders warned the guards to keep their hands off the princess. However, if any of them could defeat the girl, she was theirs to claim. The only obstacle was those two small creatures, who needed to be dealt with first. Excitement buzzed through the guards as they anticipated what would happen next, bristled with indignation at being labeled as a pet. Meanwhile, the main character quietly turned to Brenda, curious about the identities of the guards. She explains that, although their appearances have changed in this place, they remain bound by a strong influence that governs their actions. Despite this, they have rescued her on several occasions, proving themselves to be trustworthy companions. The princess feels thrilled to see Brenda standing up for them. Turning to, she promises him a grand prize if he joins their fight and helps them break free. Motivated by this offer, resolves to do whatever is necessary to succeed. At the start, he intends to demonstrate just how powerful a gunshot can be. At the same time, within the room where and Erica had been brought, the man in charge began to present them to others. In front of the crowd, they found themselves unable to control their bodies, puzzled as their feet kept moving to the rhythm without pause. The audience buzzed with excitement as anticipation for the dance filled the air. The man instructs the group to perform daring stunts, while silently wishes for it to arrive quickly. The presenter announces that the long-anticipated moment has at last come. If they wished, they could pick up a few dance moves from the girls. Members of the audience began tossing money, hoping to buy a personal lesson. Fear took hold of. Meanwhile, a crowd quickly gathered around, encircling her. The presenter announces an intention to explain some easy steps to the audience. Begins to dance, confidently displaying her moves to the group of boys. The guys become excited, each one eager for a chance to dance alongside her. The whole crowd is motivated to impress with their own dancing abilities. At the same time, finds herself doing the same, moving to the beat and demonstrating the basics to others. Despite the flurry of thoughts running through her head, her body refuses to cooperate with her intentions. The guys hanging out with began dancing energetically and encouraged her to join their fun. The excitement around their dance moves kept growing stronger. Despite their efforts, exhaustion had completely overtaken them, leaving them unable to endure any further. Both of them suddenly released a wild, high-pitched scream, sending the atmosphere spiraling into chaos. Exhausted and soaked with sweat, they finally stopped dancing. The host declared the end of the first round, but neither could leave just yet since the next round was about to start. At the same time, fired relentlessly at the soldiers he spotted, defeating each one and destroying their weapons and armor as if he were playing an action-packed video game. The pig simply watched in confusion, unable to understand the orc's actions. Easily overpowered all the guards around him. The soldiers stumbled backward, tripping and losing their footing as if they had slipped on a banana peel. Moving swiftly, replaced. He continues to shoot relentlessly, as if he were trapped in an endless action film. Bullets zipped through the air from every direction as the main character dove right into the chaos. Spotting an opening, Brenda quickly grabbed a sword from a nearby guard. Without hesitation, she leaped into the fray beside, prepared to take on two opponents at once. The main character fired enthusiastically, trusting Brenda to watch his back. Both of them exchanged a smile, recognizing how well they worked together as a team. Continued his relentless assault, directing powerful blasts that struck the armor of every soldier in his path. Suddenly demanded the pig's opinion on the mysterious pet's abilities. The pig, completely unprepared, panicked as his defenses crumbled. Without hesitation, shouted for the pig to stay put, insisting he had questions to ask. Pressed him for information about the eerie insects lurking within the demon bowl. Driven by fear, the pig frantically pleaded with the wizard to intervene. But before anyone could react, unleashed the power of his staff. Both of them quickly made their escape from the scene. The princess felt amazed by the way magic had frightened their pursuers. Brenda urged the group to move quickly, insisting they had to leave right away. Meanwhile, the orc grew restless, eager to reunite with his friends and Erica. The uncertainty of their whereabouts made it impossible for him to relax. At the same time, and returned to the stage, preparing to showcase a brand new dance routine unlike their previous performance. Everyone present receives an invitation to participate. The pig dashed frantically along the corridor, shouting about getting revenge on those who wronged him, but exhaustion from the chase was beginning to slow him down. Realizing he couldn't keep running much longer, he decided it was time to release the beast. He slid the key into the lock and announced his plan to release his pet, declaring that nobody would be able to stop it. After swinging the gate open, he called out for the creature to emerge, but an unexpected and chaotic event quickly followed. Brenda steered a cart along the path, accompanied by the princess. She offered an apology to the princess, explaining that the cart was far from the luxurious transportation a member of royalty might expect. The princess remained calm, enjoying the breeze and appreciating the chance to cool down. Meanwhile, grew anxious, urging everyone to leave the city quickly because danger was on its way. A thunderous blast erupted behind the group, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Out of the smoke, an odd-looking beast emerged, letting out a terrifying roar that echoed through the streets. Brenda quickly noticed the danger approaching and alerted everyone to its presence. The people in town stared in disbelief, struggling to understand what kind of monster had appeared before them. Raised his voice in alarm, his concern clear as he imagined the monster devouring innocent people. Brenda notices that the creature is a gigantic wolf from the mountains, and to her surprise, it seems to be someone's pet. Understands that even the pig was eaten by this enormous beast, just as the monster begins to rush toward them with incredible speed. Its jaws open wide, and it quickly outpaces their cart. Shouted a warning, urging everyone to move faster or risk being discovered. Brenda observed the animals hauling the cart, thinking they were reliable but hardly quick. Suddenly, snatched one of his weapons and fired at the approaching monster. He strikes the creature directly on its tongue and mouth. The strange wolf let out a pained howl before becoming even more furious. Noticed that the creature's anger had reached a whole new level. As the monstrous creature drew nearer, he became painfully aware that his weapons would do little to stop it, and unless he acted quickly, they were all at risk of becoming its next meal. Urgently called out to Brenda, insisting they had to get the cart farther away from the approaching threat. Understanding immediately, the girl signaled her agreement and quickly set into motion a hidden skill possessed by the animals harnessed to the cart. Tattoo's balls would always shrink back and dart away incredibly fast, much like how a startled animal might flee in an instant. Looked confused, clearly not understanding what was happening, while Brenda clarified that this was something they did whenever they felt threatened. However, she also pointed out that they could only remain in that position for a short period, just a few seconds, before needing to move again. Having gained a bit of distance from the wolf, the group felt a slight relief. Leaped from the cart, confidence in his abilities shining through, with the loyal dog never leaving his side. Back in the cart, panicked the princess and Brenda as they worried about its bold move, while the main character remained calm, even as the wolf inched ever nearer. The dog began to dig energetically, as if on a quest to unearth hidden riches. Soon after, jumped in and began to dig with intense determination, as though he were leading a major excavation. Once he uncovered his find, surprise washed over him as he understood that his abilities were real. From the earth, he lifted an enormous item, his mind racing with curiosity about its purpose, only to discover it was a pivotal discovery. After brushing away the remaining soil, prepared himself for action, now fully equipped and ready to face whatever came next. The wolf lunges forward with determination, as if driven by a clear purpose. Just as the creature is about to reach, the main character launches an explosive shot directly at its face. Witnessing this sudden action, both Brenda and the princess are left in complete shock. Felt a rush of excitement as he admired the weapon he had just acquired. The girls observed him closely, their anticipation making their hearts beat faster. The enemy's head had been completely destroyed. The wolf slammed into the ground, completely defeated and unable to continue. Urgently insisted that finding and was a top priority. At the same time, and remained preoccupied with their presentation, unable to make progress. Both girls were preparing themselves for an upcoming fight event. Feeling overwhelmed, grumbled that her head was pounding as if a marching band were playing inside it. She informed that it was time for them to leave. Meanwhile, the announcer's voice filled the air, declaring that their next competitor needed no introduction. The legendary stepped forward, and the audience erupted in excitement, clearly showing their admiration for her. Basked in the affection from those around her, expressing her gratitude to each person. The announcer then turned the audience's attention to the upcoming event, building anticipation for some impressive performance against the two girls. The battle is on the verge of beginning. Walked over, amused by the way they responded to the drink the announcer had handed them. She remarked that a charming pair like them should keep the audience's attention instead of letting the excitement die down. Anger flared as she shouted at to stop touching, rushing forward in a burst of energy. However, before could get close, seized her wrist with a swift movement. With a sneer, taunted, questioning whether still had any fighting spirit left. Despite determination, her body refused to respond, leaving her vulnerable. Seeing this, turned her attention to, choosing to handle her opponent first. She gently embraces Erica, reassuring her that she will look after her from now on. Let out a terrified scream as confusion filled her mind, unable to understand why his touch was so unnervingly slick and unpleasant. Hurled Erica to the floor, causing Erica to complain loudly that the sticky substance was stinging her skin. Pressed down on, trapping her beneath her weight. Felt shock wash over her as she realized she was being defeated. The enemy appeared thoroughly entertained by the spectacle Erica was creating. At that moment, declared that Erica was now under her control. The audience buzzed with excitement, their eyes glued to the action as urgently called out to, urging her to regain her focus. Brenda expressed her regret too, explaining that she needed to escort the princess back to the castle and therefore couldn't assist him in finding his friends. The princess, her face bright with gratitude, assured that she was incredibly thankful for his help and promised that the kingdom would reward him. She invited him to visit once he had rescued his friends. Then, turning to, she requested a small favor. Wrapping her arms around him, the princess squeezed him tightly, commenting that his fur was even softer than she had imagined and admitting she had wanted to hug him since they first met. Afterward, Brenda and the princess departed together in the cart. Left alone, called upon the dog to guide. Panicked as she struggled to control her unresponsive body, while noticed how close was to giving up entirely. Before anything else, she intends for to captivate the audience by putting on a show during the battle. His form began to blend into S, leaving the girl puzzled about why their bodies were fusing. Before Erica even notices what's happening, she finds herself completely ensnared, with no way to break free. The crowd erupted with excitement, their cheers filling the air as they recognized its trademark maneuver. The fighter realizes that has fallen entirely under her influence, with its actions now dictated by her will. Forces the group to perform awkward dance steps in front of everyone, leaving them feeling humiliated as the audience watches. Stands vulnerable, while remains relentless and unyielding. Stared intently at, silently instructing her to avoid glancing at the audience. At that moment, needed to concentrate on her dance moves and ensure the spectators remained captivated. Grumbled about her energy fading, while responded by saying the timing was just right. The girl's strength finally gave out, and she fell to the ground. She felt completely worn out. Confidently claims that nobody has ever managed to withstand a battle with her. Filled with concern, urgently calls out in an attempt to rouse. Meanwhile, realizes that she still has unfinished business with. Admired the impressive appearance of the warrior. While still guiding his movements, she began making strike the other girl, using as her puppet, delighted in the playful battle against her friend and soon directed to turn her blows toward. The crowd's excitement grew, echoing with enthusiastic cheers. With a confident push, sent charging at, preparing for the next round of action. The creature emitted an unsettling, high-pitched laugh. Without warning, suddenly regains consciousness and strikes her hard across the face. And crashed onto the ground with force. Excitement filled as she noticed that had finally regained consciousness. Spat onto the ground, trying to appear fearless. His punch had surprisingly been the jolt, needed to snap back to her senses. Considers the move to be fairly impressive. Meanwhile, urgently demands that help remove from her back. Rai's strength had not yet returned, and once more he lost his balance and fell to the ground. Noticed that was still unsteady on her feet and grinned, deciding to use weakness to her own benefit. Slowly, tentacles began to emerge, poised to capture at any moment. The audience erupted with excitement, declaring the move to be the fighter's hidden advantage, just as jolted back to full awareness. She sprang to her feet, appearing much more lively than before. She manages to avoid nearly all of the razor-edged tentacles whipping toward her. Observes confident appearance and impressive speed, though she questions whether can maintain that pace for long. His energy began to fade as she struggled to evade the relentless onslaught of sharp objects, but there were simply too many. Suddenly, without warning, a tentacle shot forward and stabbed into her thigh. Celebrated her success as she managed to stab and inject her with a strange liquid. Panic washed over when she realized she could no longer control her own movements. Her legs gave out beneath her, sending her collapsing helplessly to the floor. The audience erupts with excitement. The warrior gazed at the mysterious substance. Her curiosity piqued, but before she could investigate further, additional tentacles coiled around her, pinning her firmly in place. Cheered with excitement, proud that she had managed to catch her target on the very first try. His heart raced with fear when the slick tentacles coiled tightly around her body. As she realized they were closing in to harm her, panic her, and she desperately cried out for mercy, begging them to stop. Claims that after her arrows strike the girl will lose her humanity forever. Before she has a chance to react, a force suddenly crashes against her shell. Stared wide-eyed at the fissures in her shell, clearly unsettled by the damage. Meanwhile, lips curled into a sly smile upon noticing the visitor. Stands perched above, gripping his weapon tightly. He grumbles inwardly about how difficult it is to launch an attack from such an awkward position. Eagerly anticipated reuniting with her friend, and together they both began to feel a renewed sense of security. Was puzzled by the force of the impact. To her, appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary orc, and she doubted that any spell could have created such a powerful blow. She realizes that he is pressing that odd metallic object toward her. Quickly repositioned, maneuvering her so that body blocked any potential threats, effectively using her as a barrier. Stiffened, feeling trapped in a difficult situation. He notices concealed behind, and understands that attacking her is not an option. She wondered aloud about the identity of the strange being, and was puzzled by the idea of an orc using magic. Her curiosity led her to inquire whether he was connected to. The girl responded with a cheerful smile, confirming the connection. Meanwhile, his gaze seemed to turn anything he looked at into a target, making it clear that resistance was pointless for her. The entire crowd shifts their attention toward, their interest clearly piqued. Realizes that although her shell is usually tough, has somehow succeeded in harming it. At the same time, observes that the tentacles wrapped around her are beginning to slacken. Rose to her feet and launched herself in an effort to rescue. Seeing this, became excited, silently wishing that would manage to pull them apart. Meanwhile, grew anxious, mentally protesting that she hadn't been warned this competition could become so dangerous. She quickly into her shell, eager to make a swift escape. Meanwhile, bounded past the crowd, not waiting for or to catch up. The audience murmured in dissatisfaction, insisting that the performance still had more to offer. Decided there was nothing left to keep them there, so she signaled to that it was time to leave. As the crowd grew restless, they began moving toward the ring, intent on storming it. Seeing the people closing in, both and panicked, fear rising as the mob approached. The group immediately begins to retaliate, striking at anyone who dares to approach them. With their confidence restored, they are now able to protect themselves. The men moving closer quickly notice how powerful the girls really are. Despite this, the men persist in their attempts to surround them, but the girls skillfully defeat each opponent that comes near. All at once, a gunshot lands on the ground, causing several people to leap away from the new hole that appears in the ring. However, several people continued making efforts to approach. Realizes that the people approaching have no understanding of weapons, so firing a warning shot fails to intimidate them. Despite the attempt to scare them, they continue moving closer without hesitation. Found herself seized by the crowd, who insisted that her strength meant nothing against so many people at once. The crowd began to strike and taunt her with cruel remarks. Notices that the sheer number of opponents overwhelms him, making it impossible for him to manage the situation alone. Erica cried out desperately, her voice echoing as she pleaded for someone to come to her aid. Struggled to escape, but a giant beast stepped into the ring. The towering monster grabbed and hoisted her high above the ground, declaring that he would be the one to end her fight. Fear swept through the crowd, since this creature had previously been banned for his wild and unpredictable actions. The monster observed, remarking that she seemed like an ideal target for his oncoming assault. Fear the girl as she realized just how enormous and powerful the creature truly was. He burst into laughter at her predicament, while struggled desperately to call out for help. Without warning, the creature's head suddenly explodes. All the boys in the room look stunned while enjoys herself without a care. Leaps up, attempting to draw everyone's focus his way. He shouted to grab everyone's attention, boasting that he had just defeated their enemy with his magic. He warned the group that if anyone else dared to make a move, they would suffer the same consequences, urging everyone to leave immediately. The onlookers stared in disbelief, struggling to comprehend how he had managed to destroy the creature's head with a single action. As one man edged closer to, suddenly sprang back into motion. Following that moment, the entire group scatters in utter fear. Feels relieved, realizing he had just a single bullet remaining, but notices that everyone scattered after witnessing his final shot. The main character approaches his two friends, who embrace him, overjoyed and grateful for his rescue. Their excitement is evident as they celebrate his decision to chase after her. Acknowledges that the small dog's sharp sense of smell played a crucial role in their success. He also shares that they discovered 2 secret locations connected to the insect tamers. They decided it was time to return to the castle and share the latest gossip. As began to step out of the ring, an unusual event occurred. An odd shape suddenly emerged beneath their feet. Leaps into the air, startled by the sudden appearance of a glowing magic circle beneath her feet. A figure approaches and demands to know if they actually believed they could walk away unscathed. He challenges their plan, wondering what gave them the courage to warn the customers never to return. The man introduced himself as, and claimed he was the proprietor of the establishment. Upset about the destruction of his home, refuses to overlook what happened. Unfamiliar with the type of magic wields, he quickly creates a circle designed to block magical powers. As he does this, he threatens to eliminate everyone present. Just as he is about to complete his sentence, his head suddenly bursts apart. The main character complained about how boring it had been. Suggested they should leave, though before going, the group decided to relax and get something to eat at the inn. As they arrived at their destination, a wave of relief washed over them, and they rejoiced in the fact that they had survived. The group raised their glasses, grinning widely as they did so. Each person enjoyed the food and drinks, savoring the lively atmosphere as if they were celebrating at a grand banquet. After completing their intense mission, the girls finally took a moment to relax. Exhausted, they soon drifted off to sleep to regain their strength. As they rested, a knock echoed at the door, got up to answer and inquired about the visitor's purpose. The man at the door informed him that someone was requesting his presence. Descended the stairs to investigate and found Brenda waiting for him. Surprised, he questioned why she had come. Brenda explained that she had set aside her pride to seek his help once more, since something unusual was happening with the princess. Later, Brenda led the group onward in her cart, whilst curiosity about Brenda's connection with grew. Brenda observes the princess behaving unusually and feels curious about her odd actions. She expresses her gratitude to everyone for paying attention. The group traveled into the bustling city of. When they reached the castle, the princess warmly welcomed them, expressing her excitement that had been able to reunite with his friends. She also expressed her gratitude to the girls for making the journey. Felt relieved to see the princess back at the castle, safe and unharmed. The princess acknowledged that had saved her life. She explained that the king was currently ill and unable to greet them, which disappointed the group. Brenda suggested that once the king recovered, they would hold a grand banquet in celebration, and in the meantime, she encouraged everyone to enjoy their stay at the castle. Brenda added that she had already reserved the finest accommodations in the city for. According to what they'd learned, the repulsive man collaborated with parasitic bugs, raising the possibility that one of those creatures had been placed inside the princess during her captivity. Brenda grew anxious, wondering aloud about the princess's fate and searching for a solution, but Erica admitted her uncertainty, pointing out that the pigs were already beyond saving. The warrior feels a surge of anxiety but makes an effort to appear calm. Admits to himself that his only skill lies in fighting, leaving him completely lost in unfamiliar situations like this. Observes that when the princess was abducted, the ground teemed with insects, suggesting a possible link to the nearby city. She concludes that they should investigate the city the following day to uncover any clues. Brenda agrees to lead the group and encourages everyone to relax and get some rest before their search. Becomes excited and decides to organize some entertaining activities for the group. Eventually, both drift off to sleep. Noticing that they are sound asleep, seizes the opportunity to slip away and gather some supplies. Beyond the city limits, himself with digging into the earth. As he worked, uncertainty about the type of opponent awaiting him filled his thoughts, making him determined to find something extremely strong to prepare himself. Without warning, he struck a hidden object beneath the surface and immediately began clawing at the earth with his hands. Excitement surged through as he realized what he had uncovered. The following morning, a voice called out for, prompting to urge him out of bed. The moment he opened his eyes, he startled awake, finding both girls standing nearby with wide smiles on their faces. They remarked about the intense heat that day, fanning themselves in discomfort. Nodded in agreement, also feeling the sweltering temperature. Then proposed that they relax by playing a video game together. The group moved into another room to unwind. And looked excited for a break, but sensed something unusual in their behavior. Noticed him and exclaimed to herself how adorable and fascinating he was. She reached out, pulled him closer, and playfully ruffled his fur. She let out a laugh, revealing that she had only been joking. Afterward, Erica moved in closer, expressing her excitement by assuring him that spending time together would be a lot of fun. She gently embraced the small creature, running her hands softly over his fur. Finds the situation incredibly odd and struggles to understand what is happening. Erica behaved in a way that was out of character, prompting to respond with an eye roll directed at her. After that, she walked over and gently stroked as well. They think he looks cute and often reach out to pet his soft fur, unable to help themselves. The young man found himself completely lost in the strange atmosphere, and overcome by anxiety, he cried out in alarm. Observes that he appears exhausted. A sudden knock sounded at the door as someone called out to them. Brenda rushed inside, her face full of urgency, announcing that trouble had erupted. Felt uneasy about her abrupt entrance, but Brenda insisted that a much bigger problem was at hand. Chaos had swept through the city, every girl could be seen dressed in identical clothes. As they walked confidently through the city in their sheer outfits, people couldn't help but stare. Felt a wave of surprise while Brenda observed that everyone was behaving in a similar manner. The girls complained about the sweltering weather, insisting they needed to find some water. Alarmed, Brenda panicked at the thought of them going to get a drink. Soon, she noticed the girls heading straight for the town fountain. Realized the girls were reacting just like, and also struggling with the oppressive heat. At that moment, Brenda called out too, admitting that she had tried to hide it, but the heat was getting to her as well. And played in the fountain, sending water everywhere as they tried to cool off, while Brenda admitted that the heat was becoming unbearable for her. Began to perspire slightly, and Brenda changed into her transparent jumpsuit to cope with the temperature. Inside a nearby store, a group of boys admired an attractive worker, though she grumbled about how hot it was. One of the boys claimed the heat didn't bother him much, but the young woman insisted she felt so faint she could barely stand. Without warning, she collapsed onto the ground, losing consciousness. A young man hurried over to assist her, advising that she needed to rest, but her eyesight was so hazy that she couldn't make out his face. Disoriented, she shoved him away, insisting that he leave her alone. The girl complained about the unbearable heat, insisting that she needed lighter clothing to feel more comfortable. As she changed into a new set of clothes, the young man's eyes grew large with surprise. Trying to calm her nerves, she gulped down a full mug of beer in one go. The sensation of burning heat overwhelms the girl. Despite drinking something cold, she still felt overheated, so she made her way to the town fountain. When the boys exited the shop, They noticed that all the girls on the street were behaving in a similar, unusual manner. Concern grew among the group as they tried to figure out the cause of this odd situation. Saw that more and more girls were gathering, their striking and fashionable outfits drawing attention. The young man questioned whether the insect tamers were behind this strange event. Even Brenda had joined the crowd of girls at the fountain. Without warning, the water from the fountain ceased to flow. The girls gazed upward in surprise, confusion clear on their faces, while remained just as baffled as the rest. Observed the scene carefully, attempting to understand the situation, as the group of boys came to the conclusion that they needed to get involved. One by one, the girls began to lose consciousness, collapsing as if caught in an unfortunate competition. The boys hurried over, quickly helping the fallen girls and carrying them off in search of medical help. Spotting Brenda, approached her, checking to see if she was okay. Out of nowhere, a piercing noise erupted from behind the group, grabbing everyone's attention. They spun around to find tentacles creeping along the streets, as if it were just another ordinary day. A gigantic beast covered in writhing tentacles advanced toward them. At the front of the group, the insect tamers moved forward, shaking a bell as if signaling the start of class. Stared in confusion, trying to figure out what the strange thing could be, just as the girls suddenly appeared behind him. Without warning, the entire group began drifting toward the enormous creature. Grew anxious for Brenda's safety, baffled by how everyone marched toward the strange noise as if headed to a celebration. The women started referring to the huge being as Lord Insect, clinging to its body and gushing about how chilly and refreshing it felt, comparing it to enjoying on a scorching day. The main character seethed with frustration, thinking that they were all embracing a massive bug while risking frostbite. Spotting one of the insect handlers nearby, suddenly understood that the women were acting under some kind of control. Drawn by the creature's coldness, all of them hurried toward the monster, completely delighted. The group felt a surge of excitement now that the intense heat was finally leaving. The insect tamers stood before the massive beast, producing strange sounds as if they were performing at a lively show. At the same time, the girls relaxed nearby, enjoying a break and keeping themselves cool. Tension filled the air as the group of city boys grew increasingly agitated, vowing to stop the events unfolding and defeat the enormous insect. However, before anyone could act, the girls rushed to shield the creature, boldly declaring their determination to protect Lord Insect from any harm. They protested, insisting they were being smothered and wished to be left in peace. The boys, puzzled by the reaction, questioned what the others meant by their accusations. One member of the group shouted in panic, insisting that the insect was manipulating them and warning that continuing like this would lead to their downfall. Unfazed by the chaos, a girl declared her determination to defend the creature at any cost. Meanwhile, understood that approaching the insect to attack it directly was not an option. At that moment, he notices the creature is cloaked in what appears to be moss, likely using it as camouflage among the group of women. The clever beast clearly knows how to hide. Considers that firing at the monster without harming the girls could work, but he realizes that if the creature survives, things might spiral out of control. He thinks he has a chance against the enormous monster, but he recognizes he must handle the insect tamer first. With that in mind, he prepares to capture and attack the tamer. Suddenly, someone grabs his weapon from behind. Turning, he finds and standing there, having sneaked up on him, signaling for him to calm down. Desperately pleads with him to spare the insect lord from harm. At that moment, he notices that his friends have also fallen under the creature's influence. Each of them seems content simply to lay their hands on the monster's icy skin. A surge of frustration rises inside. Suddenly, the royal guard storms onto the scene. However, the female soldiers are dressed in odd uniforms and behave unusually. They position themselves between the boys and the creature, signaling for them to stay away. Suspects the soldiers might be manipulated by the same insect, and finds himself completely unsure of his next move. A figure approached. The princess made her way confidently through the gathering, coming to a halt when she stood before the insect. She wore a smile that sent a shiver down the spine, its unsettling quality impossible to ignore. She dropped to her knees, greeting the insect lord with the respect reserved for royalty. In a surprising turn of events, she announced that the entire country now belonged to him. The audience murmured with confusion, trying to understand the princess's words, while the girls lounged comfortably as if enjoying a luxurious spa. The princess knelt serenely, showing no sign of worry. Meanwhile, stared in disbelief at the unfolding events. The boys stare in shock as the princess gives control of the continent to the insect lord, questioning her sanity. Murmurs ripple through the audience, who grumble that her royal status doesn't give her free rein, vowing to intervene if necessary. Tension builds as they prepare to use force to halt her actions. Meanwhile, the princess embraces the insect lord, joining in a hug with the others, but the moment feels all wrong. Without warning, Brenda strides forward, positioning herself before the group. Can hardly believe what he's witnessing. Brenda slams her foot down with such force that the ground splits beneath her, as if she wields the power of a thunder god. She urges the group to pause, explaining that the princess is not making rational decisions. Felt a surge of excitement when he noticed that Brenda appeared more focused, although she admitted her mind was still in disarray. Nevertheless, encountering the princess had sparked a reminder in Brenda about her responsibilities. Her duty was to guard the princess, and she accepted this role without hesitation or doubt. Brenda raised her voice, demanding the group's attention. She reminded everyone of her earlier point. The princess was behaving abnormally and would never normally say such outrageous things. The guys exchanged glances, silently agreeing that Brenda's assessment made sense, but they also felt uneasy about standing around without taking action. One of them questioned the other's excitement, suggesting instead that they should simply appreciate the situation as it unfolded. Another guy pointed out how the atmosphere of the night was intensifying and urged everyone to be alert. With the girls now distracted, he saw a perfect opportunity for the group to introduce themselves and potentially make new friends. He emphasized that they ought to seize this moment, since for some, chances like this might not come again. The group of boys began to nod in agreement as they recognized the validity of his statement. The men eagerly plunge into the crowd, eager to strike up conversations with the girls nearby. Leaving their weapons behind, they saunter over with relaxed confidence. The girls, caught off guard and intrigued, immediately join the lively exchange. The men waste no time, their eyes quickly searching for the girls who catch their interest. A relaxed get-together quickly becomes more serious than anyone expected. Because of the enormous insect, the boys completely forget to take the situation seriously. Brenda shouted a warning to the princess, insisting that the situation was becoming dangerous and they should leave immediately. Before she could move, however, a hand seized her arm. The person holding her confessed that they had always wished to be friends with her. A crowd gathers closely around the girl, their voices overlapping in a chaotic jumble. Confused and disoriented, she struggles to understand the situation unfolding around her. At the same time, someone stealthily approaches the princess, which leaves Brenda feeling anxious and unsettled. However, before the would-be intruder can get any closer, the insect lord intervenes, grabbing the princess with a swift movement of his tentacle. He effortlessly sets her atop himself. Startled and alarmed, Brenda cries out for the princess, panic overtaking her. Remains rooted in place, uncertain about how to react. The princess beams with serene happiness. She proclaims that the source of all this turmoil is the insect lord, announcing his intention. Beneath them, the boys continued to pay no attention to anything around them. He made attempts to start conversations with the girls, even though they were completely uninterested and unresponsive. A young man admired a girl, offering her praise, while she turned to the insect lord, seeking assistance. Without warning, one of his tentacles reached out and seized her, using his many flexible limbs. He began gathering all the girls nearby, and surprisingly they were pleased by the refreshing atmosphere he created. Some onlookers whispered that the girls were simply being presented as offerings. Observing the chaotic scene, could only think that everything unfolding before him was utter insanity. Realizing the urgency, he recognized that, and desperately needed his assistance. The pair lay nearly unconscious, enjoying the coolness radiating from the insect lord. The main character decided to intervene, firing a warning shot at the men encircling the girls. The shot barely nicked a few of them, which was enough to make them retreat. Loudly announced that this was meant as a warning and demanded everyone leave immediately, without wasting a. Went on to clarify that the strong smell was actually from his own urine. After realizing just how intense the odor was, he made a habit of relieving himself at a distance from the others. Rise suddenly opened his eyes, startled by the strange smell filling the air. She instructs to wake as well. The main character approached and gently extended his paw toward her face, while slowly moved in, closing the gap between them. Began to respond. Realized that what she had wasn't enough and turned to the orc, wanting to know what he intended to do next. After some thought, he discovers a way to bring her out of her slumber. She suddenly jolts in surprise, struck with a powerful punch, launching him through the air. Wrinkling her nose in disgust, she wondered what that awful odor was, thinking it was overwhelming her senses. She notices nearby and questions whether his scent was the cause. Interrupts, explaining that this was their one chance to wake her up. Insists that it's impossible to help every girl and urges everyone to escape while they still have the opportunity. He calls out for Brenda to hurry as well, and begin fighting off the men restraining Brenda. Together, they seize her arm and pull her to her feet, warning that staying any longer will make the situation even more dangerous. Despite this, Brenda hesitates, her concern for the princess making her reluctant to leave without her. Firmly believes that withdrawing is necessary before taking any further action. Without hesitation, she lifted Brenda into her arms and hurried away from the danger. The entire group raced out of the city as quickly as they could. Overwhelmed with worry for the princess, Brenda panicked, insisting she would return to rescue her and urging the girl to stay strong just a bit longer. In the days that followed the turmoil, the city fell completely under the rule of the insects. Despite the chaos, they successfully made their getaway, taking both Brenda and the dog along with them. The insect and its followers stormed the castle alongside the women, seizing control and prohibiting men from entering. The male soldiers ended up imprisoned in the dungeons, stripped of their weapons after the chaos. Resistance proved futile, leaving the men defenseless. The once bustling streets now stood empty of women, and an eerie silence hung over the city. No one knew what was happening inside the castle or what plans the enormous insect had in store. Everything remained shrouded in mystery. Entered the room, declaring his return to everyone present. He and Brenda entered the room together, and inquired whether they had uncovered anything new, but the main character responded negatively. They hadn't managed to find any vantage points to look inside the castle, and even if they had, their weapons would barely make a dent. To use his missile, he would need the insect to reveal itself. Insisted they should leave soon, reminding everyone that they weren't the ones who started this trouble. At that moment, he felt he had gathered enough information about the insect controllers to inform the king and collect the reward, leaving the rest to the authorities. Proposed sending their findings in a letter and staying longer to gather more details, but was eager to get paid and leave. Brenda. The reality was that his business had collapsed ever since the insect invasion began, making him eager to help out. Not far away, a modest mountain held a refuge managed by an elderly woman, a former mage who once battled against the bugs. Perhaps she possessed valuable information. Brenda doubted whether such a person actually existed, while insisted that they were already pursuing her. Remained silent as all eyes turned toward her. After a moment, she inhaled deeply and agreed to join their plan. She insists that once the princess is rescued, Brenda must hand over anything she demands. The group set off toward the location they had been instructed to find. Upon arrival, they began their ascent up the mountain. Despite its daunting appearance, the path proved to be much simpler to climb than they had anticipated. After some time passes, the group notices a small cottage in the distance. They make their way toward the quaint dwelling. A sign by the entrance reveals the purpose of the place. As they hesitate at the threshold, it becomes clear to them that the elderly woman who manages the inn is an experienced witch. Approached the door, determined to uncover the situation and eager to speak with the elderly woman right away. Meanwhile, noticed faint voices drifting from the nearby bushes. Prompted by curiosity, they both plunged into the greenery, searching for whoever might be hiding there. Deep within the forest, a girl eagerly demonstrated her gardening talents for a boy, hoping to impress him with her skills. She expressed her excitement about their meeting, and looked forward to showing him her lettuce crop the next time he visited town. And his companions stare in disbelief at the unexpected sight before them. Nearby, a girl turns to a boy and gestures toward the carrots, seeking his assistance in gathering them. At that moment, she was thoroughly enjoying herself, while the boys also seemed to be embracing the lively atmosphere. The group began enriching the earth and gathering various useful resources from the area. Without warning, the woman shouted, demanding to know who had the audacity to intrude. She was furious that someone would spy on her at such a crucial time and declared that she would never let it go. And the rest of the group were startled by her outburst. Suddenly, a strange being emerged from a glowing magic circle. The friends quickly moved out of the way to avoid its assault, only to realize that yet another creature had appeared just behind them. It seemed that the girl had called forth an enormous creature to deal with an insect tamer who had been sneaking nearby. In response, a different insect tamer fled the scene, terrified. Observing this, the girl realized that one of the intruders had managed to escape, and she found it absurd that such pests would dare trespass on her territory. She considered, and the others quite oblivious for failing to detect the tamer's approach, and she wondered aloud about the identities of these strangers. She realizes that these people aren't actually staying at the inn. Wonders aloud if she is the elderly woman in charge of the mountain inn, which leaves the girl feeling deeply insulted by the suggestion that she is old. After waving farewell to the boy who had assisted her with the harvest, she invited him to visit more frequently. The boy expressed his gratitude before departing. She returned indoors, poured tea for the gathered group, and announced her readiness to listen to their story. Casually, she remarked that despite having lived for ages, this was her first time witnessing an orc converse fluently in the human language. Settling into a seat, she introduced herself as Fine, the innkeeper. Wondered aloud if she always gave guests a tour of her garden. With a cheerful laugh, Fine claimed that tending the garden was her secret to staying youthful. She explained that she had intended to show the boy the garden the previous night, but had missed some parts. Rolled her eyes, insisting that she had not been alone in confronting the insect tamers. Once known as a hero, and his companions had also been involved. That same hero had now ascended to the throne. The girl teased that even the man famous for defending his city against insects could not escape getting older. Remarked that time eventually catches up to all people. Curious, questioned Fine's age, which left her feeling quite insulted. Explained that the group had started collecting information about the insect tamers and already understood some basics, but now they needed every detail they could uncover. Rises to her feet, clearly offended. She approaches the window and closes it, reflecting on how she once relocated to the mountains just to avoid insect tamers. Despite her initial intentions, she considers that she might be willing to rethink her stance. The city, with its complicated past, has managed to track her down even here. Deep down, though, she feels finished with mountain life. She prepared herself to track down some men in the city, a place that grew even hungrier whenever she was nearby.